Welcome everyone. Today we're talking about who the hell are the El. This is one of my favorite subjects to talk about, and we're going to jump right into it. I'm going to explain who the El are, what does El mean, and where does it come from. And we're going to get an in-depth look at what are also known as the Anunnaki, aliens, vampires, gods, superheroes, reptilians, fish people, angels, demons, elves, Dro, Illuminati, the elite, elders, and elect. We're going to look at the Nephilim, the Vanir, the Azir, Valkyries, Amazonians, Procelines, Atlanteans, Vulcans, Romulans, Klingons, wizards, giants, the bloodline, the family, the ruling class, mermaids, mermen, the dragon lords, the shining ones, fairies, spirits, sprites, witches, the fellers, the fallen, the archon, the nomo, the snake people, the serpent race, the Jedi, the Sith, the star beings, lizard kings, saurians, the council, the silicon race, and the watchers. These are all names by which the El have gone by. I'm going to be referencing some notes here from time to time, and you'll have to bear with me as we kind of wing it here just to kick things off. But let's start off with the word El. And I'll go ahead and bring up some screen sharing here. And I will show you the word to begin with. Clearly that's not it. Alright, I did have this pulled up. Sorry there were some technical difficulties to begin with. Okay, so this is the word El. Now, why is this such a big deal? Okay, this word is the root of all of these things, and I want to break down this word first. For a more in-depth breakdown of the word El and other words, please check out my video entitled The Secret of the Elves. The Secret of the Elves. So what you see right here in front of you is the ancient word El. All words, all letters, they stem from pictures, picture form, okay? And then they turned into characters, and then they turned into random lines that don't mean too much. But I want you to look and focus right there in the middle. There's a picture of an ox's head, and that is essentially our letter A or our letter E in English. This is the beginning. We read from right to left in many of these ancient languages. So we have the ox head. This symbolizes strength. And then next to that is the El, which it kind of does look like an L, but it is a shepherd's staff. And that symbolizes authority or leadership, sometimes also teacher. So together we have a word picture, and it's pronounced Al or Ale. And over time, there are different ways to pronounce this. Some have evolved into saying al or al, and some say el or ale. However, this is the word that has been usually and traditionally associated with the word God. So whenever we read in our holy books and sacred scriptures and writing, and you come across the word God, typically it's translated from this word right here. This is the root word for other words like Allah and Elohim and things of that nature. But like I said, for a more in-depth breakdown, check out my video called The Secret of the Elves. So, the E is a vowel sound. It's usually ah, and it conveys strength. And then the shepherd conveys the shepherd's staff, or the walking stick, or the rod, conveys leader or teacher. So we have the strong leaders. Somebody that was indicated as being different from everybody else. They were a strong leader. This translated into words like Elohim, El Shaddai, Al, A-L, or Al, like Muhammad Ali, right? The word Ali is just two words. The I, the E part, means my or me, and Al or Al means God, right? Strong leader. So my God is what Ali means. Or Al-Jabbar. Many Middle Eastern countries start with Al or Al. Al-Jabbar, place I've been to. Allah. We also get words like hello, hola, or hola, and aloha, which basically means strength to you. And this used to be the greeting that we would give one another, strength to you, you know. Or may the gods bless you, essentially, is what we're saying. Okay, so the word El. The word El has turned into, I'm going to go ahead and put up a slideshow so we can get some pictures in the background while I do a little teaching here. Okay, so all of these pictures I'm going to be explaining, every single one of them as we go. But for right now, it's just going to be a slideshow while I sort of chat in the background. Okay, so the word El means God, like we talked about. Now, whenever we attach the ancient word picture of a hook, which is this right here, the Vav, or the Upsilon in ancient Greek, whenever we attach this word picture of a hook to be hooked to the L, to be attached to the L, or of the L, associated with the L, we have the word Ilu, or Elva, okay? And the elves, this is where we get the word elv, or elven, or elf. And it's actually, the word Ilu is a real word, and I'm going to get into that here in a minute as well. The Vav, the hook, like I was talking about, attaching the hook to the word. The hook is the Vav, and it attaches to L. So you get Elva or Ilu, the Vav. I break this down in my other video as well, The Secret of the Elves. So please do check that out. The Vav is the number 6 in ancient Hebrew and Phoenician. It translates into the number 6. It means attached. It's a symbol of a hook. This is very important to keep this in mind, that the Vav, or the number 6, is directly related to the image of a hook. And we're going to talk about the hook here in a bit as well. But it's very important to remember that the U, the letter Vav, the hook symbol, it sort of evolved over time into the letter U, the letter V, the letter W, and often the letter F. They all make similar sounds as language evolved and changed over time. So, the hook stands for to be attached to something, pertaining to something, or associated with. It means of thee. And it evolved into U, W, V, and F in ancient Greek. The Ilu. So let me go ahead and pull up a picture here. I want to go ahead, and it's probably going to pop up on the screen as well. We're going to do Freemasonic degrees. And we'll just pull up some of the first images that we see here. This one's one of my favorites. Okay, let me get the screen sharing back. That might help. Okay, there we go. Okay, pay no attention to the advertisement off to the right there. But over here, you can see, let me go ahead and bring it up a little more. Okay, I want you to look right here where these are the degrees of Freemasonry, okay? In Freemasonry, basically, you get promoted several times. And every time you're promoted, you deserve a new title in Freemasonry. And these are the various titles that they get along their Freemasonic path. I want you to pay special attention to the 14th degree here. This 14th degree is known as the perfect Elu. I'm just making a screen adjustment here. So this is called the perfect Elu. Also, you want to look at the 11th, 10th, and 9th degrees, respectively called the Elu of 12, the Elu of 15, and the Elu of 9. So ask yourself, we have this ancient word El, and then when you attach the U to it, it means of the gods, essentially. And now we have a direct correlation with Freemasonry, where they have degrees named after the Elu. They're calling these people the Elu. Now, later on, this is actually from, I bet, probably the 20s. It should say on here. Yeah, 1929. Later on, they changed the word Elu into the word elect, which is essentially the exact same word, the elect, but it translates to the Elu as well. So we've got the Elu, and you've seen the Freemasonic degrees that are named after the Elu. Remember, Vav, the hook, the letter U, that's the number 6. So let's take a look at some examples here. Sorry about going so slow. Sometimes this stuff is very hard to set up. Well, the examples are going to play on the screen, so just go ahead and put the slideshow back up. But some examples of the Vav correlating into esoteric symbolism are Volkswagen, right? Volkswagen. So Volkswagen, the symbol for them, their logo, is actually, let me go ahead and type it in here. It's 3 Vavs, and it translates to 666. There we are. Okay, so this is a good example here. So here you can see the... oh, you can't see it. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, there you can see the 3 Vavs, right? We've got the V, and then the V as well. And you could say the W. But the W is really the double V. It's the exact same thing. It's a double V. It's 2 Vs. So here we have VVV, which stands for and translates esoterically as the 666. Another one that we have is Maroon 5. In their new logo, you can see that they're using the triple Vav. They're just separating the V's and making a couple of them upside down, basically. These are more like vectors, same exact type of thing, check marks, all of that. And let's see, we also have, oh, V, the movie. There's the peace sign, you know, whenever people go peace. There's the sign of the Vulcans, the WWW, the World Wide Web. These all translate into 666 or VVV. The NASA vector is a very popular V as well. So I want to go back to the hook real quick. We've got the L, and then we add the U onto it, or the Vav onto it. And the Vav, like I said, means to be connected to be associated with. And the ruling class used the Vav as one of their symbols, saying that they are connected to the gods. That's why they use that. It's their connection. They have a connection to the gods. They're hooked onto, they're attached to, they are of the gods. And that's why you see the V all over the place used, usually kind of hidden in plain sight. We've got Captain Hook, right? Captain Hook, he is the hook, right? People just call him Hook. Okay, I'm going to allow the slideshow to play here as well. So we've got Captain Hook, and Captain Hook fights against Peter Pan, which is really interesting because Peter means father, and Pan is the horned devil figure, which represents, you know, Satan and things like that. Pan fights against Hook. Pan is an elf, and Hook is his mortal enemy, Captain Hook. We also have Maui's hook, for those of you who have seen Moana. We've got the hook of Maui. Let's see here. Sorry, I'm just looking for some more examples. So we've got Maui's hook, and that was a centerpiece of the movie Moana, was Maui's hook. It was this magical hook, and it's directly related to the god Maui, who is essentially Prometheus and Loki and all of these other El, or elven beings, or the elite. So we've got Maui's hook, Captain Hook, Saturn's hook, the hook of Saturn. The symbol for Saturn is partially a hook and a cross. Question marks as well. A question mark, we know that the period means this is the end of the sentence, right? But the hook implies mystery. So whenever we have a sentence that's finished, we put a period, but to imply that there is a question, there's some air of mystery, we put a hook over the period. And it basically implies there is mystery here. I have a question. That's where that comes from. Excuse me. Okay, so we've got the hook, we've got the question mark. The Grim Reaper has a hook as well. And the flux capacitor, one of my favorites. I did show a picture of the flux capacitor on here. Basically, it's a Y, okay? So remember this, because the Y symbol is how you used to write the ancient letter Vav. So let's go back to screen sharing. I just want to show you what it looks like so you can look out for it. Okay, there we are. Now we're just going to type in Paleo Hebrew Vav. Boom. Okay, so here we have the Vav. Here's the evolution of the Vav, like I was saying. Early Hebrew, let's check this one out. You can see that it's basically a Y, what we would call the letter Y today. And it evolved over time. In Greek, it ended up becoming sort of an F from this shape here. Pay no attention to why there's the number 9 there, because it actually correlates to 6, not 9. So I don't know why there's a 9 there. But this is the letter Vav, and it looks like the Y. And sometimes it was just drawn like a Y. So, for example, if you look at the flux capacitor, and I say flux capacitor like everyone knows what I'm talking about, but it's from Back to the Future, and it just happens to be what makes time travel possible, right? So this Vav, which is directly related with Saturn, who is Kronos, who is the god of time, this is the epicenter of this movie. If it weren't for the Vav, you would have no Back to the Future. You would have no time travel in that movie. Let me show you another example of a really interesting one. Let's see, we've got... I'm typing in Terminator Company, but that doesn't... Oh, here we are. Cyberdyne. That's what I was looking for. Cyberdyne also has... If you've seen the movie Terminator, that's what I'm referring to. Forgive me. I'm a little bit out of it, but I'll just keep pushing forward. So this is the logo for Cyberdyne Systems in Terminator. Cyberdyne Systems is the company that developed Skynet, the net in the sky. And Skynet is a program used by Cyberdyne in order to give artificial intelligence a life of its own, and they end up taking over the world. So Cyberdyne Systems is this corporation. They have a pyramid with a Vav right in the middle of it. Some people may not question this. They might look at something like this and say, who cares? It's just a shape. It's just a logo, but it's not. These things are designed and chosen specifically, directly, and for a purpose. And there's reasoning behind all of these things that you see, especially in movies and things of that nature. So anyhow, we talked about what El means. El translates into strong leader or mighty leader. It also is what we have adapted to name God. Okay, it's basically what people have called God. And we have looked at the importance of the Vav, or the adding of the Vav, the number 6, to the L, right? The 6L, the L6, or those who are of the L. The Vav is the number 6, and it also is a hook, or often the letter Y. At least it looks like the letter Y, but it's not the letter Y. Hopefully that's not too confusing. Okay, so now the next thing I want to point out is something that was pointed out to me. One of my patrons recommended that I check out this movie called Beyond the Sky, which I did, and I watched it. So I'd like to share with you a piece of the script from the movie Beyond the Sky. One of the main characters in this movie is this woman, and she goes to these Native Americans, and she knows them, and she grew up with them. And the girl's name is Emily, but when the Native Americans see her and they greet her, they say, "Ilu, I'm glad you came. It's been too long." So the guy she's with says, "Ilu," and she says, "It's my native name," right? So she's named Ilu. This is esoteric naming. They don't put Ilu in there for no reason. There was no need for the Indian in the movie to refer to her as Ilu when Emily would have done just fine. They gave her this Native American ancestral name, and it's very important. One of the themes of that particular movie was her bloodline, which is, you'll see this theme in a lot of movies, because the elite are concerned with the blood, their family's blood in particular. And we're going to talk about the elite and their obsession with blood and the blood of their family a little towards the end here. I might come back to this movie script here in a bit, because there are also some really interesting tidbits in that particular movie. But I did want to point out that the girl in the movie was named Elle. Just like if you've seen Stranger Things, right? One of the main characters is also this girl who has these superpowers. And her name is 11. 11. The word 11 is significant, and they use it quite often because it's basically a synonym for elven. Now, not in our language today, we wouldn't call that a synonym, but that's how they play with words. They use words that sound exactly like other words but have a different meaning. It's called, I think it's called a homophone, if I'm correct. But anyhow, the word 11 translates esoterically to the word elven, and the elven race are the elv-on. O-N in ancient languages translates into those of. So elv-on are those of the El. And so oftentimes you'll find characters that represent the El or the elite or the gods. They will have the word El in their name. Oftentimes 11. There were this Council of Nine a long time ago, and they probably still exist today. But whenever you have the understanding that 11 translates to elven, now 9/11 takes on quite a different meaning. The 11, the elven 9, and 9 is also an esoteric number. It's also 6 upside down, which is important too. These people are very smart. You need to understand this. There is a reason that they are in all of our legends, all of our myths. We develop a standard of beauty to try to emulate them, to be like them. We revere them. That's why they are known as the gods, the angels, anything amazing that is good or bad, we attribute to these beings, partly because of their intelligence, their level of intelligence. They were able to do so many things that seemed magical and miraculous to us. So that's who we're talking about right now. Let's go ahead and move forward from the symbolism of the Vav. I'm just going to touch on the elven race, okay? I refer to them as the elves. Simply put, depends on who I'm talking to. I might use different words or descriptors, but whenever I'm talking about the world rulers or aliens or gods or things like that, I call them the elven race. They are the elves. And we're going to talk about that here right now. I'm just going to touch on it. Like I said, I've done a lot of videos about the elves themselves, and I have a whole playlist about the elves as well. So please check that out. So this is the elven race. In the ancient Germanic languages, they are referred to probably even modern day, they're referred to as the ALF. A-L-F. Remember, the L, the E and L can also be an A. ALF. The ALV. The ALF, right? So, the world of the elves, the land or the realm of the elves in Old Norse mythology is Alfheim, which means world of the elves, or realm of the elves. We also have the realm of the dark elves, which is Svartalfheim, which means dark elf world, basically. We've got Alf. For those of you who grew up in the 80s, there was a television show called Alf, A-L-F, and it supposedly stood for alien life form, right? So it's interesting. None of these things by themselves give definitive proof of what I'm offering. However, collectively, they start to weigh a lot and they develop a collective importance. So the television producers could have named the television show whatever they wanted to, but they named it Alf, and they gave this alien creature pointy ears, just like an elf. And that's another thing that you'll see quite often is the pointy ears. The word Alvin means of the elves. It's directly related to the elf. And as well as the elf, the word related to the elf is Aleph. Now remember that first letter I showed you where it looks like an ox head? That letter is called Aleph, which is just like the word Alf or elf, right? That's the Aleph. And that's very important because remember how I said that the ruling class is very smart and they understand how to manipulate words so that they have us consciously saying one word with one meaning, but subconsciously we take in the other meaning of that word. So let me give you an example. The Alfs, right? The elves, the Aleph. Aleph also means first, right? It translates into the symbol of the olive, right? It's the exact same word, it's just a different pronunciation. So the symbol for the elves, or the Aleph, or the Alf, is the olive. Same exact thing, Aleph. And also the olive branch is symbolic of the line of succession for the elves, or for the elves. We also have the word and the name Olaf. So we've got elf, Alf, Alvin, Aleph, Olive, and Olaf. Olaf is also something that characters are often named in movies and television shows, and it represents the elven race, the ruling class, or the magical. I think Count Olaf in a series of unfortunate events, and I think there's an Olaf in the one of the Disney movies, Frozen, I think it's called. Now, another one, just kind of throwing this out there because I like words. We're going to talk a lot about word origins and meanings in this video, just a heads up. But another one is California, right? This is something I grew up in California, and I always wondered why are our states named here in the United States? Our states are named the weirdest things, you know? They're not English for the most part. And a lot of them pay homage to the Native American tribes. And the Native American tribes, their language is very close to an ancient language that's close to like being Hebrew, Hawaiian, Phoenician, things of that nature. So I'm just checking the notes. Oh, ka. Ka can mean snake. It can also mean like something is like this or like that. So we have ka, aleph, forn. Forn means like first, basically. And ya. Ya is another name for Enki. So ka, aleph, forn, ya means first snake, first, or before Enki. Something like that. Anyhow, strong snake, ya is first. These are various translations of California, which also has Los Angeles, which means the angels. So if you ever want to do something fun, I highly recommend typing into Google, what is the full name of Los Angeles? And you may be very surprised at how long of a name it really is. But Los Angeles, Angeles means the angels. Well, the angels are really just the elves. They are this alien race of beings that you see right over here. And we're going to talk about the angels as well. We're going to go in order. Pardon me. Okay, so moving forward, elves are basically immortal. Okay, if you've ever seen a movie or television show where it shows elves, there are certain attributes that we can pick up on and that they always have in common. They are immortal. Guess who else is immortal? The El, or the gods, or, you know, all these other types of beings. They are immortal. Typically, they're shown as being archers, right? They have the bow and the arrow. This represents them being those of the arch, or the archon, the archon, those of the arch, or those of the arcs, or the ark. So they'll be archers. They are forest dwellers, and this harkens back to a time that I'm not going to talk about too much in this video, but there is a prehistoric time that you are not taught in schools. This is a time of fantasy, of gods, wizards, everything that we're talking about today. And in that world, everything was very large. Everything in the world used to be titanic, gigantic. In our minds, we think of dinosaurs and things like that, but that's just something that's been force-fed into our imagination. But in reality, everything was gigantic and vastly different from today. So if you think of the old world, do yourself a favor and don't imagine everything that we have here today, but everything's just much bigger. The world was altogether different, but everything that was different in that prior world that we're not taught about, I call it ancient Oblivion, the world that's been stripped from us, deleted from our history books, and hidden in secret libraries and places around the world. That world was a sylvan world, and sylvan means basically home of the elves. It was a forest world with giant trees that shot up into the skies. For more information about that, I would highly recommend checking out on my playlist. I have a giant tree playlist, and it's most commonly referred to as what is it? No forests, the no forest theory, you know? Anyhow, let's move forward. Okay, so we've got the elven race from Alfhind, the Svartalfs, Alf, Alvin, Aleph, etc., California. Elves are basically immortal. They are archers, or those of the arch. They are forest dwellers. They are workers of magic, just like the gods, right? Just like these immortals of various cultures, religions, backgrounds, histories. All of the gods, all of the El, there's Alf over there, all of the El knew how to work magic. They had a technology that far surpasses ours and may have had a connection energetically that they infused with their technology, making them seem very magical to us today. All right, so I want to show you a picture of something real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to screen sharing, if I can find it. Window capture, there it is, boom. Okay, so now we're screen sharing again. I'm going to show you the stages of lightning. So let's go ahead and type that in there. Oh, there it is right there. Boom. That's because I searched for it earlier. Okay, here are the stages of lightning. Let's go ahead and show you this one right here. Now, as you can see towards the bottom, these are clouds down here, and there's the actual lightning that you're all familiar with. What you don't know, many of you might not know this, is far above those clouds, reaching high up into the sky, there are other electromagnetic phenomenon happening that is directly associated with the end result of what you call lightning. And they have named these things. As you can see at the very, very top, they have what is known as elves. And elves are this weird circular ring that kind of explodes from the middle immediately. And this all happens very quickly, okay? But you have this explosion from the middle, this sort of halo. And they have named this halo elves. Underneath that, you have this sort of trickling down from this halo, and they call these sprites. The word sprite is... it's kind of like a feminine version of El. It's like calling an elf a girl. It's a sprite, basically. I know we've been conditioned to think that sprites are little points of light that flutter around and leave pixie dust everywhere, but that's not what it is. These are all the same beings. They just have different descriptors. So the question is, why would they do that? Why would they name the very highest phenomena that exists in our sky elves? That's very interesting to me. And also the second highest, the sprites. Named them after the elves. They don't have to do this. Another thing I forgot to write down is the governments of our world use things called extremely low frequency waves. Guess what that stands for? The acronym is ELFs, ELF waves. Now, it didn't have to be that. The acronym could have been really low frequency or absolutely low, or I mean, absolutely would have been the same thing. But you get my point, right? These things are not done accidentally. That's a pretty good picture of it. Let's see if we can pull that up. We cannot. All right, let's get out of Pinterest because I don't care. All right, let's move forward, shall we? Okay, so yeah, I just wanted to share that with you. It's really interesting. They always hide these things right in front of you because they realize that the collective, we're not going to ask questions. We're not going to look into names. We're not going to wonder why these things are called what they are. We've all but lost meaning behind the characters that we call our alphabet and our language. They know we're not going to inquire as to why. So they probably figure, why not? Let's just tell the truth. They're not going to accept it because we fed them so much of what we call fantasy and sci-fi. These people are never going to look into these things. You know, and then they get to wipe their hands clean because whenever they're confronted about it by their superiors, they get to say, hey, we told them, we were honest, you know, that was our disclosure right there, but nobody asked us about it. Let's go back to the slideshow here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to refer to my notes again as we move forward. Now, one of the words associated with Elu is Illuminati, right? The Elim, I-M at the end of a word is the same as adding an S in English. It pluralizes the word. So if you hear a word that ends in im, I-M, it means that the word is typically plural. So we have the Ilu or the Elim, the Eluim, the Elim Nati, the Illuminati, basically, right? And I'm not playing with this word, okay? This isn't me stretching things out. This is how word origins and reverse engineering etymology works. And quite often you have professionals who look into etymology and they give it their professional opinion. However, they rarely account for discrepancies, how words change over time. For example, I use this one quite often, the word butterfly. The word butterfly is a non-existent word. We created that word. The original descriptor of that insect that goes past you is the flutterby. It flutters by. But because we speak incorrectly, we started calling it the butterfly, and it was accepted. Even though it's complete gibberish and makes no sense at all whenever you think about it, we have accepted it and we have lost the original. We've lost the original meaning. And another example is, this one kind of gets me, but it's the word commentator, okay? There is no such thing as a commentator unless you're talking about an average potato, okay? An average potato is a commentator. But the word is commenter, right? These are the commenters, people who are commenting on something. They are not commentators. There's no such word as commentator. There is now. Now we have accepted that because people who didn't understand the vocabulary, they all accepted it and they all started saying commentator, and so we accepted that into our language. Now we rarely use the word commenter anymore, which is what it is. All of you in the chat right now, you are commenters, not commentators, but we've accepted it, and this is how language evolves, you know. Okay, so let's move forward. So we've got the Ilu or the Elim Nati, okay? The word nat is the root of the word native, okay? Nativity. It is nat, N-A-T, and it implies locally born, basically. It means to be born, essentially, to come into the world. So the Ilu, or the Elim, the Elim Nati, the Illuminati, are the native Els, or those of the native-born El race, or related to the Els. You get the point, so let's just skip past that one. Those born of the El. The word hell might also be directly related. Ha just means the, and then El, the place of the El. Some of them, at least. And then we have hell essentially means a covered place, concealed, or a mystery. Like I said, the hook also symbolizes mystery. The question mark, the hook, mystery, the L, all of that. Now let's get right into something that you're probably more familiar with because you've heard about it a lot. It's more accepted in the mainstream, and that is the Anunnaki. Typically translated as those who from the heavens to earth came. That's not a direct transliteration, that's a translation, which means we're giving it our own descriptor to fit our language. But it really means, Anu means heaven, or at least the god of heaven. On, or of On, of the god from above, heaven. That's how we translated that. And then Naki, right, from earth, or our earth. So the Anunnaki, those are the beings who came down from the skies, not from some heavenly abode, okay, not some magical, mysterious word that we're going to use, from the sky, from above, okay? Different cultures called the sky different things, but basically aliens, right? Basically those beings who came down to earth, who could fly, you know, because they didn't fall, you know, we all knows what happens if you fall from too great a height, you hit the ground and you die. So they came down, they had some sort of technology, they were able to fly. The Anunnaki. Also, the word Anunnaki is related to the biblical Anakim. Remember I said if it ends in im, it's plural. So it's the Anakim, pluralized of Anak, which is short for Anunnaki. And then, of course, directly related is their captain or their lord, which was Enki, or is Enki. Enki, En means lord, and Ki means earth. So literally, Enki is the landlord. He's the landlord. That's where we get the word landlord from. Because we want to be like the gods. We want to be like the El. So we have to have landlords over everybody and pass down, you know, authority in our nice little pyramid system that we have set up. Another word that's directly related to the Anunnaki is the name Anakin. You might be familiar with Anakin Skywalker, right? Also known as Darth Vader. Anakin. Directly related to the word Anunnaki. And then, of course, Skywalker, right? Those who from heaven to earth came. The Skywalkers. These are the beings that can walk around in the sky. They can fly, basically. Anakin Skywalker is one of the Jedi, or was one of the Jedi. And the word Jedi is real. It's a real thing, that the Jedi really exist. It's not a mythical made-up word that George Lucas just thought it sounded cool. It's really a word that exists. There is a such class as the Jedi. Oh, let me go ahead and move this window capture here. There we go. So anyhow, the Jedi, the way it's spelled is D-J-E-D-I. DJ. The D is sort of, you know, it's become silent in our day and age today, but it's J, the Jedi. So anytime you see the D and the J together, typically it conveys the meaning of a serpent, right? Remember I told you about the picture form? So the serpent, those of the serpent, the Jedi, they are the serpent class, right? And we're going to tie all these things together. They're going to make absolute sense by the end of this video. The Jedi are not fictional. They are the workers of magic. They are the elite. They are the ancient El, or the elven race, those who could manipulate energy in ways that we don't comprehend today. So today we call it fantasy. Today we pay no attention to it. Oh, for example, let me talk about this. This is from the movie, or it was from the movie, Harry Potter. In Harry Potter, you see magic where the pictures seem to move and come alive. And when Harry Potter came out, we were very used to pictures not moving. However, we've come out with our own technology that very closely mimics what you see in Harry Potter. This is what magic is. Magic is a word and a descriptor that we use when we can't describe how something works. We say it is magical. It is simply the working of energy. It's doing something technologically or energetically that others don't understand how it's done. That doesn't mean it's a trick. It just means that it's something of interest and others don't know how it's done. So let's move forward. We've got the Anunnaki, Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi, which is the root. The root of that is the DJ. Okay, it's the serpent. The DJ is the guy that plays the music and has everyone dancing to the beat, you know, very close to bass and things that are basic. They like the bass. So those are the DJs, or the DJI. I have a drone that's called DJI. And the reason it's called DJI is because all of the things that we have that fly or move around or get us from one place to another, we tend to name those after the gods or the El or the elven race. Don't worry, I'm going to get to these pictures as well. So let's see here. We've got the Jedi, the DJ, which basically means serpents, the Jedi or the Jinn. The Jinn, if you're familiar with Islam, are the beings made of smokeless fire. Or Jinni, the genies, right? The genies are these powerful beings, typically blue, by the way. That's going to come into play later. Whenever they're depicted, you know, it doesn't mean that they actually were blue, but there are reasons why we color the ancient gods the particular colors that we make them. Which I'll explain as well, and I have explained in some of my other videos. Okay, so we've got the jinn, the jinni. We also have a name, Aladdin, right? That's a very American cowboy way of saying Allah Jinn, right? The Jinn of Allah, the Allah Jinn, or Aladdin, basically. Okay, so let's move forward. Next on the list for the El. And who represent the El? Of course, we're going to talk about Superman. Superman, you all are familiar with. Everyone's heard of Superman, but maybe you don't know his real name, which is Kal-El. Okay? Kal-El. I'm going to get into that. Kal-El basically means strong God or very strong leader. Okay? And Kal-El, Superman's dad name, is Jor-El, or Yor-El, which I believe means God of rivers, which is also very interesting because if you look at Enki, the leader of the Anunnaki, or one of the leaders of the Anunnaki, he actually had a twin brother, or not really a twin, but he had a brother as well. We'll talk about his brother in a little bit. But Jor-El means God of rivers. And if you look at Enki's his picture, his description, his diagram, the thing that represents Enki, typically he's got these two rivers kind of pouring out of him with fish in them. So I find that to be a reference to Enki directly, Superman's father. And then, well, I'm going to go ahead and pick on Superman a little bit more. Superman is a cartoonified El. He is the absolute truth of historical record, something that did exist at the very least at some point in time that has been sort of caricaturized. You know, whenever you go to a party or something and there's somebody drawing caricatures, they kind of look like you, but they're not. They reflect some of your more dominant attributes. That's a caricature. That's what Superman is. As a matter of fact, that's what all of the superheroes are. But we're going to get into that, you know, a little bit later. See, the one thing we need to understand is it's like the telephone game, right? When you play the telephone game, you've got the first sentence that the first person says, and they whisper it into the next person's ear. And 50 people later, when that sentence comes back to the originator, typically it's been changed or slightly altered. It's the same thing with our perception of what we call the gods, or the El, or the Elohim, or the Eloah, or the Allah, or etc., and so on and so forth. We have come to describe them differently based on our different interactions with them, based on different historical timelines, based on different atmospheres and different the way that the earth has changed over time and our surroundings and our scenery. We have seen them quite literally in a different light. And so, is it any surprise that we have so many different references to them, but we have lost sight that these are all the same references. These are all the same exact beings that we are giving reverence to, or paying homage to, or talking about. So let's go ahead and, Superman. I'll probably come back to Superman because we're going to talk about the superheroes here in a bit. And if the picture pops up, I'm going to get back into that because there's a lot of symbolism going on with Superman. The dinosaurs. Let's talk about the dinosaurs, right? The kingdom of the dinosaurs. Who once ruled the world? If you asked, a classroom full of children, who once ruled the world before mankind? We've been trained to say, the dinosaurs. It was the kingdom of the dinosaurs, But I want to break down the word dinosaur real quick. The word dino or dino means fearfully great, okay? It's been translated into words that don't have their original meaning anymore, like the word terrible. The word terrible means today like shame on you. That's shameful. That's terrible. That's wrong. That's not really what the word meant a long time ago. The word terrible meant so great in size that it struck fear into the hearts of the person, into the viewer, okay? Dino means fearfully great. That's what it means. And soar means, let me break down the word soar, okay? And you got to keep in mind, I'm fighting, when I explain these things, I'm fighting against all kinds of indoctrination and teachings and expectations that we have been subjected to our entire lives, okay? But the word soar in dinosaur comes from the root S-R. There are no vowels in the oldest of ancient languages, okay? S-R can be pronounced sir, sor, sar, shar, sometimes the S was an SH sound, and it means prince or ruler, right? Somebody who rules over. So the word dinosaur means a being that is so big that it scares somebody and it's in charge. Okay, it's nothing to do with reptilians or lizards or anything like that. We have changed the word. The word has evolved because we have given it new meaning, but that's not the original meaning. Okay? This was the kingdom of the terrible rulers, the rulers who were giants, the rulers who were so large, and they're represented by these lizard types of beings because that's what we do. When we encounter something that is unfamiliar, we try to relate it to what is familiar. Okay? So when we see a huge being that looks very scaly, and I'm going to talk about the scaly structure of the L as well, because their composition of their body was much different than our composition of our body. They were very scaly or scalene in nature. So much so that they actually would shine and glisten depending on what type of a light they were under. So anyhow, these are the dinosaurs. We have made up this story of the dinosaurs. I know that's going to be very hard for some of you to believe, but I encourage you to look into it as I have. I'm only sharing my path with you. If you find something of interest, please research it and go check it out. All you have to do is type in dinosaur hoax or the battle of the dinosaur bones and stuff like that, and you'll find out a lot about the origin of dinosaurs, which didn't really exist in our vernacular until about 100 years ago. Okay, so anyhow, these are the dinosaurs. Dino means fearfully great, and great means large. Okay, great does not mean that's great, that's awesome. No, great means grand, large, gigantic, fearfully gigantic. There's a fly or a gnat or something in my house. Sorry. Okay, let's move forward. So we've got the dinosaurs. Sar is directly related. Remember sor? Sor is the word sar or shar, and it means prince or ruler. Sar is directly related to the word sir. That's why we pay homage to others. They are our rulers. They are our elders. So we say sir when we're talking to an older man. I don't, typically. But that's what we've been programmed to do, to address someone by their sir or their surname. Same thing. So it translates into the word sir. From sir, we also have czar, czar, the word czar, C-Z-A-R, czar. Okay, same exact thing, it means ruler, a czar or a khazar, right? They started pronouncing the C a little bit differently. Instead of sir, it's now khazar and khazar, and that turned into Kaiser, Kaisar, Caesar, and so on and so forth. You get the point. Saurian, right? For those of you who are interested in aliens, you're probably very familiar with the various races of aliens that come from all the other places and, you know, in our huge galaxy and all the stuff that we're taught, right? One of those races is called the Saurians. They're always depicted as reptilian lizard-looking beings, which is very strange when you don't understand why, right? They're called Saurians, so you would think that the word saur is related to lizards, but it's not. It's related to the word ruler. And the rulers of old kind of had a lizardy look to them. They had a fishy look. They had a scaly, shiny sort of look to them. Does not mean that they were reptilians. It does not mean that they were lizard people. But it is interesting that when we depict the Saurian race, which is the ruling class or the ruling race, we depict them as being lizards, right? Okay, another thing that's related to dinosaurs, the land before time. Remember how I was explaining that there is this time that existed, right? There was this time that existed here on our realm that we are not privy to. We don't have the information about the true history of our world, okay? We only go back to Samaria, ancient Babylon, Mesopotamia, anything before that. Now they're all of a sudden going to say, well, let's go back, 100,000 years, and all of a sudden, they hypnotically suggest the idea of evolution to us. So we think if you go back any further than that, then we start imagining men sort of changing or de-evolving into monkeys. And then you just have a world full of animals and that's it. That's not the reality behind it though. But I'm going to get off of that. The land before time, same thing, right? The land before our time actually started, before our written record started. That's the land before time. That's the land of the terrible rulers or the dinosaurs. We also have the leprechauns or the scaled priests. The priests of the scaled ones. That's what leprechaun breaks down into. I also explained that in my other video, The Secret of the Elves. We have Godzilla. Right, this huge dinosaur-looking lizard thing that's this giant, and it's called God and Zilla. I honestly can't remember what Zilla means right now, but they put the word God in it because it's just like the gods. It's this giant, terrible, reptilian, scaly-looking ruler who does whatever he wants to. We also have Cyberdyne. Remember I showed you that picture earlier of the triangle with the Y in the middle? That's the logo for Cyberdyne Systems in the movie Terminator. Cyber is related to technology, right? And then dyne or dino, which means fearfully great. A fearfully great technology, fearfully large technology. Cyberdyne Systems. I just want to throw these out there because I don't know if I'm going to cover them going into the break once we get back from the break here. But we have the all-seeing eye, right? Remember, L is also pronounced all, A-L. Now, we in our cowboy language of the West, we say al, but it's not pronounced al. It's pronounced all, right? Al-Jabbar, all, whatever other words start with all, okay? But we have the all-seeing eye. And we also have Gothic. I'm going to come back to Gothic because we're going to talk more about the gods after the break. But we have Gothic. The word goth is translated from the word God, which is actually translated from the word Gad, which means fortune. That's all it really means. And oftentimes when we're talking about the L or the gods, we're talking about, somebody, we see them in the light of however fortunate we are, right? That's kind of how that works, right? That's where we get the word lucky from. Loki is the god of fortune or misfortune. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they support you, sometimes they don't. And so we've got good Lok or lucky and bad Loki as well. So anyhow, that's Gothic. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take between a 5 to 10 minute break. We're going to keep the live stream going. When we get back, we're going to finish up and we're going to get into the second half, talking about aliens, draconians, vampires, superheroes, reptilians, angels, fish gods, the Vanir, Valkyries, Amazons, and lots of other stuff as well. So I really appreciate your patience. I know that I had some technical difficulties to sort of begin everything, but we're going to go into the break, and I'll see you guys in less than 10, okay? All right, thanks. Okay, I'm back. Thank you so much for your patience. It was going to be a little bit longer of a break. However, I could not find any music for everyone to listen to, and I really hate to leave people hanging as far as that goes. Okay, so let's jump right back into where we left off. All right, so the next thing, well, for those of you who are joining us, we're talking about the El. Who the hell are the El? The El are the ancient gods. We have so many different names for them. I've put the names in the description, and keep in mind, that's a very limited list. That's a very small list of the different descriptors that we have given to the beings known as the El. Now, speaking of the El, one of the other types of beings, even though there are many classes of them that we have created, are the El-E. Remember the word Ali, how I said it means my God? Ali means my God. Alion means of my God, or those of the gods, the Alion, the alien, basically. This is exactly where the word alien comes from. It is the Alion, or those of the gods, of my gods. We wonder why most alien life is portrayed as humanoid. I mean, I wonder that. I don't know how many people out there have ever wondered. When you see Star Trek, Star Wars, you know, there's very rarely some very just truly alien-shaped, strange life form or being. There are exceptions, of course, but the reason that they're portrayed as humanoid is because they look just like us. They seem to have some sort of a relation to us. It's not because everything in the universe naturally evolves to a bipedal form. I don't know how much I believe that. However, it's because we are made in their likeness. We have been made in their image. If we're talking about the gods of all of these various creator religions, then that's what they all agree on. That's what they all say, that we are made in their image. So whenever we portray them, it's not that they look like us, but it's that we look similar to them. They are not humanoid. We are God-like. We are like the El, or we look similar to the El. We have a similar shape to them. That's why they are portrayed as humanoid, usually, the aliens, because they are not too different from us, and for good reason. One of the classes of aliens, I've already talked about the Saurian, which is the ruling class, or the ruling race, is what it literally means. We have the Pleiadians. Now, I don't want to get into the breakdown of Pleiadian too much because it's very detailed. If you want to see an actual drawing where I show you the word and how it's broken down, check out my video, The Secret of the Elves. And but the word Pleiadian, this is another word. Remember how I was teaching earlier that we change words over time, that we have taken words and we manipulate them and we change them so that we don't remember what they originally were. Well, Pleiadian is one of those words from the Pleiades, right? The only problem with that is there is no such word as Pleiades. It's the word Plagia and Aryan. The Plagarian, the Plagarin, okay? And I break that down in my other video so you can see how how a spelling discrepancy actually gave rise to the word Pleiadians. But they are more accurately known as Plagarans. The word Plag means ocean or great body of water or sea. They are the Arion, those of the air, the gods, the immortals who come down from the heavens to earth, the Arion, okay? And they are from the waters, essentially. Now I'm gonna let that one just kind of sink in for a bit. If they come from above, how do they come from the waters, right? For more information on that, if you'd like a clue, please check out my video. I think it's called The Waters Above. It's got a picture of like a mirror and somebody's kind of reaching up and touching the mirror. So anyhow, let's move forward. We've got the Alion, the El-Eon, which are the aliens are just the El. They are the pluralized form of El. And they are the foreigners. They are the ones that we haven't seen in quite some time. See, that's the mistake that we typically make as a race of beings together, is we believe that we are the best, and we believe that we were here first, and if anyone else arrives on the scene, they're the strangers, right? But in reality, it's backward. Big surprise, our whole world is backward. Everything is upside down and the reverse of anything that is considered the truth. So, one day, and we're going to talk about this at the very end of the video, but let's say we have an alien invasion and aliens come here. That doesn't mean that they are alien as in foreigners, okay? That's not what the word alien means. That's what we have turned it into. I'm trying to get my chair straight, sorry. That's what we've turned it into. The word alien we have turned into meaning foreigner, but really it means of my gods. That's what it means. So should the gods who were here before us return one day, they may not be seen by some, like myself, as being foreigners, but as actually locals or natives, or the Elim natives, or the Illuminati, right? Okay, so let's move forward. So these are the aliens, and many of these alien races are basically representatives, caricatures of different attributes of the exact same beings. The exact same beings, which are known as the El. Now, speaking of the various races, we've got the Pleiadians, or the Plejarans, which is what I just described to you. We've got the Saurians, which are the ruling class race. Also sort of depicted as reptilian. The Nordics. The Nordics are depicted as these blonde hair, blue eyes, very strong. Thor, basically, is what comes to mind when you think of the Nordics. The Venusians, those from Venus. Well, they're not really from Venus. They are the beautiful ones. That's why they're called Venusians. It's the same word as Van or Vanir, which I'll talk to you about here in, I don't know, about 15 minutes. So we've got the Venusians, the reptilians, and like I said, they're not really reptilians. Don't you think it would be an insult if somebody called you a primate? Because you know you're not a primate. You know that you're not a monkey. A monkey is something totally different than what a human is. How do you think these these beings who were here before us, who we attribute so much of our world to, how do you think that they would take it if we called them lizard beings? You know, it's almost insulting. However, I doubt that they would be insulted because they're probably much more mature than many of us are. And that's just speculation on my part, but I think that maturity comes with experience, and when you have thousands of years worth of experience, you tend to be a very mature, if anything, almost coming across as being cold-hearted. So mature that you're like, you have your emotions in check and in lock, you know? We're going to talk about that when we talk about the Vulcans. And last but not least, Alpha Draconians. Well, Alpha, like I said in the beginning, is related to the word Aleph, or olive, or you know, the elves, basically. Alpha, elven, same thing. First, and then draconian. I want to talk about the draconian word real quick. Draconian comes from the root word drak, or drake, which may or may not be related to words like drugs and to take a drag of something, things like that. That might be a stretch, I'm not sure, but I just want to throw that out there. But draconian comes from the root word drake. The drakon are those of the drakes. The drakon, the dragon. They are the dragon race. Or Drago. Remember when Rocky fights Ivan Drago in Rocky 4? That's symbolic, as is almost everything I've ever seen in the movies, of real history, you know, of fighting the dragon, and you know what I mean? Stuff like that. The little guy. And the dragon in the movie is like 1.5 feet taller than Rocky, which symbolizes him being the giant. He is the dinosaur race, etc. Okay, so those are the draconians. Let's go ahead and move on to vampires. Vampires. I may or may not do an entire video on vampires at some future date, but I do want to highlight them. Vampires are an integral part of our society today. We have accepted them. We have embraced them. Vampires used to be something to be feared, and oftentimes fear comes with the unknown. You know, ignorance, not understanding something. That's why people tend to fear what they don't understand. Vampires, I want to talk about them. Why? Because vampires are another caricature of the El, or the elven race, like you see there. I mean, oftentimes you can look at pictures of elves, and if somebody told you, hey, what do you think of this vampire? It wouldn't even cross your mind that it's an elf. You know, you would immediately switch. This is what I think about the vampire. But a vampire is an elf. It is an immortal. We all know this. Vampires don't die unless they're killed, unless they're purposefully destroyed. But if they were to go on living their lives, they are basically immortal. Just like the Azir and the Vanir and the gods of old. They lived and lived and lived. They had lives that were unending in comparison with the small amount of life that we have. Our measly, petty little 50 years or 70 or 80, maybe even 100 years. That's nothing in the eyes of an immortal. That's a baby. That's a preemie. That's a child, you know? We don't live that long. Vampires are the immortals. Blood is very important to these immortal beings. Now, like I said, we've caricaturized it, we've cartoonified it so that they're growing fangs and sinking them into your neck, to get your jugular and to suck out all your blood. But that's a characterization. That's a cartoonifying of the reality. The reality is, yes, blood is important to them, but why? Not because they need it so that they can, because they're hungry. I mean, even if a vampire doesn't drink blood, I've never seen a movie where a vampire doesn't drink blood and starves to death. You know what I mean? It just kind of makes them angry and pissed off and uncomfortable. So they don't need it to live, but it is very important to them, just like the or the elite or the ruling class. Vampires, before our modern age sort of picks up and kind of starts cartoonifying them even more, we try to make them more human these days, but in reality, the vampires, they were portrayed as having pointed ears. I think the first vampire movie was called Nostafaru or something like that. I can't remember exactly. Please correct me in the chat. But the first vampire movie, many of the first vampire movies and depictions of vampires showed them with these huge pointy ears. Why? Well, that happens to be a trait that the may have carried, that the elven race carries. That's one of the signifiers that they are of the gods. They have more pointy, elongated ears, like the elves. Vampires also dress in a very interesting manner, right? It's not because they're just gaudy and they're from the Middle Ages or whatnot. The vampires wear capes. Quite often they're depicted as wearing capes. I know that these days we don't always portray them as having capes, but that's the classical depiction of a vampire, right? Same thing with our superheroes. And oftentimes, this was an older style of dress. We had capes, okay? We had huge robes and huge hoodies and things like that, that would essentially help to protect us from the damaging light of the sun and keep us hidden and keep our identities hidden. These are all things that the are very interested in. They want to stay out of direct sunlight and they want to keep their identities hidden. So it's no wonder that the vampires wore capes, huge, baggy, roomy robes and things of that nature, just like Jedis, as you saw, and wizards. They always wear these huge hoodies and popped collars. Now, these days, the kids, they run around and they talk about popping their collar, and if somebody's trying to be trendy, they pop their collar. They don't know why they're doing it. Let me tell you why they're doing it. Subconsciously, they want to be like the like the gods, like the ones who originally had very large collars. Why do you think collars were invented? It was to be able to keep the sunlight off of your neck, basically, okay? Now, that's one of the reasons. I mean, now we have them so we can put a tie and all this stupid stuff. But the vampires, they are photophobic. They don't like the sun, or what is known as the sun. It's really just a light in the sky. It's not my sun. It's not related to me. So I don't typically refer to as the skylight as the sun. But, for the sake of saving time, we'll call it the sun. Vampires don't like the light of the sun. So what does that infer? That infers that vampires either come from a place where there is no sun. These the beings that are represented as the caricature vampires, that they either come from a place where they don't have that sun, because it doesn't make sense that their natural habitation would be under something that poisons and hurts them and kills them. So either they're from a place that doesn't have that sun, or they're from a time before that sun, that light in our sky, was introduced. I've done a lot of videos about that as well. Basically, in a nutshell, going back further in time, it is my belief so far on my path where I am now that we didn't always have the sun. I know we didn't have the moon. There was a time before the moon. We'll talk about that here in a minute. But there may have been a time before the light in the sky that we call the sun. There may have been alternate suns, other suns in our sky that gave off an altogether different color, an altogether different glow and feel. And it was a different experience. So you can imagine if you are an immortal being who has lived for maybe thousands of years under one type of light, and you're used to that, and then all of a sudden those lights, that whole atmosphere is gone and introduced to this blindingly white light that kind of burns, and you know what I mean? I can understand why the vampires, why they would have been photophobic, you know, why the sunlight would have hurt them. Not that they're afraid of it, but that it physically, they can't deal with it. They're not adapted to it. Now, another word related to vampire is the word umpire, right? Umpire. Or how about the word empire? Like the empire strikes back. Vampire is just the V or the vav. Remember the hook, right? The hook is at the front of the word, which means of thee, right? So the word umpire is directly related. The umpire is the judge, right? The umpire is the one who makes the rules, and, you know, he's the judge and jury and executioner, basically. And also the word uber, all right? The word uber basically kind of means witch, I believe. But anyhow, I'm going to get off of that subject because I'm going to talk about vampires a little bit more in the future. And we will also get back to the word witch here in a bit. So, regarding vampires, they are immortals, just like the L. Blood is important to them, just like the L. They typically were portrayed with pointed ears, just like the elves. They wear capes, robes, hoodies, and pop their collars. Usually their collars are just gigantic, you know what I mean? And they are photophobic. They have the ability, vampires have the ability to put others into a hypnotic trance. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. Do we think that the world rulers, the ruling class, our governments, do you think that they might have some sort of technology or ability to lull you into some sort of a wavelength where you're sort of like sleeping or dreaming, to put you into a hypnotic trance, to suggest that you react or act or buy or live or die in a particular way? Of course they do. They are the vampires. So they have the ability to put others into a hypnotic trance. They are creatures of the night. Like I said, I think that the atmosphere that our realm once had was not super bright for half the day and then super dark, well, semi-dark for half the day, right? I think that we sort of had a light spectrum that was more amber. It was like dusk all the time. You know what I mean? It wasn't super bright or anything like that. And it may have even been dark if I was to go back during that time and to experience it. You know, it was, I kind of look at that world like Pandora on the movie Avatar. Right? You know how Pandora, during the night, it was dark, but it still had like a glow to it. You could still see everything. You know, it was like you can see in the dark. Which gets into ultraviolet light, and how Saturn was known, those times were known as the Age of Saturn or the Age of Kronos. And it may be because Saturn was the main star or light in our sky, and that it acted as like a black light, giving off a lot of UV light, and essentially making things glow. The gods themselves, you know, glowing. And that's why I said we would describe them in different colors and different forms and different things based on what type of an atmosphere they were in at the time. If you were a sort of albino-looking, ivory-skinned being, and you were under a black light, you would appear to be like Krishna. You would look blue, basically, or purplish, or a sort of white mixed with sort of a purpley blue look, you know? Anyhow, let's move forward from that. Vampires are shapeshifters. They can turn into bats, right? Well, we also see that the L, or the ruling class, they've been accused of being able to shapeshift. They are beings that can fly, right? Same thing with the L, the gods, the Anunnaki. All of these beings had the ability to fly. They can not come in to your life unless they are invited. This is one that I feel like we've forgotten these days, because I don't see it that much in movies anymore. But that used to be sort of a rule when dealing with vampires. Is a vampire can't come into your house unless you invite it into your house, which is very symbolic. And I'm going to allow that to, I'm going to allow you to let that one marinate in your mind, Relate it to the world rulers. They can't come into your lives unless you invite them. it's kind of like in our modern day and age, you know, everyone's got smartphones and applications and Facebook and all this stuff. Well, Facebook and all of these applications on your smartphone and stuff, they can't come into your life unless you invite them. You have to actually read their terms, go over their contract, just like, you know, the devil is typically, if the devil associates with a person or starts a relationship with them, he always has a contract. He says, here are my terms. Go over them and sign it, approve it, sign off on it. Same thing. But I know we don't read them, we don't go over them, but we still give them permission, you know. It's like if somebody knocks on your front door and he's like, hey, I'd like to come into your house and show you some things. But before I do, please read this book of what I'm going to do while I'm here. And somebody just throws the book away and says, just come in. I don't care. You know, same thing with the vampires. They cannot come in unless they're invited. Last but not least with the vampires is that they are afraid of and they are hurt by what is known as holy water. And this is very important, like the witch over here, right? Holy water. Water that destroys the bad guy. Okay, we've seen the concept of waters hurting the extraterrestrials or the bad guys or holy water. And what it is it's the waters from above. Do you remember how I said that these beings, that they came from the waters? But that's kind of an oxymoron because they came from the sky, right? Well, anyhow, in short, there is a theory that I talk about on my channel called mud fossil theory. And this basically says that sometime around the great cataclysm of the worldwide flood, all life, and especially what we kind of refer to as the bad guys, all life turned into stone. It turned into rock. It solidified. It petrified. And that's where we get the word petrify from. When we say, oh, I'm so scared, that's because these beings, these titans and gods and El, they were terrified to the point of turning into rock. They were actually petrified. For those of you who are video gamers, if you've ever played The Legend of Zelda, an interesting link to what I was just talking about is at the end of one of the video games, there's this bad guy named Ganon. And Link, who is an elf, who represents the El or the elven race, he fights against this even bigger bad guy who represents the Titan race named Ganon, puts his sword into his forehead, and Ganon petrifies and turns into stone. You see this theme all over the place. The trolls turn into stone, Medusa turning people into stone. The gargoyles. A gargoyle is a symbol of the eternal curse. The curse that was placed upon, it's basically a trophy. A gargoyle is a trophy saying, hey, if you're a bad guy, if you're on the other team, you know, remember what happened last time. We turned you all into stone, and you're cursed to basically drown forever, because that's what a gargoyle does. Is it's designed to redirect the flow of water, typically pouring out of the mouth. So a gargoyle is a bad guy who has turned into stone and is continuously drowning for all of time. It's an eternal symbolic curse. Stay away, basically. All right, so I'm losing my voice a little bit, but we're going to push through. Let's talk about superheroes and villains. Almost every superhero and supervillain that I have come across has the attributes. They are representatives of the gods, of the ancient El beings, okay? So I'm only going to talk about a few of them, but every single one of our superheroes from the comic book lore represents an aspect of the gods themselves, of the elven race themselves. So, for example, we've got Batman, right? Remember the vampires turning into a bat, etc. Usually has the pointed ears that are just very hard and stuck in place. That's not what bat ears look like. I'm sorry. These are horns, okay? Batman has horns. He does not have bat ears, okay? But he's depicted as the Dark Knight, okay? And there's some symbolism with that as well, with the secret societies. Wonder Woman is an Amazonian. Amazonian, I was taught, means without breasts, because the story goes that the women were so dedicated to archery, once again, of the arcs, the archon, the arch, those of the arch, that they sawed off their breasts so that they could shoot more straight. I don't know if I really am inclined to believe that story. However, it doesn't take away from the fact that Wonder Woman, or WW, right? Wonder Woman, which, by the way, if you take WW and you turn it on its side, it just says 33, basically. But Wonder Woman is an Amazonian. She is just like, I'm getting to my notes here. She's just like the, what was it? Like the Valkyrie class, you know what I mean? The women gods, basically. And for a little breadcrumb in the movies, you can check out Smurfs: The Lost Village. I know Smurfs is supposed to be a children's movie, but it's a highly esoteric concept. Everything in the Smurfs is reflecting the way that it once used to be, with the blue gods and the Titans, Gargamel, and all of that. So anyhow, in this movie, The Lost Village, as you all may know, the Smurfs are all male for the most part. There is a whole entire village that is separate from the Smurf village that's full of the female Smurfs. The Smurfs represents the gods of old, right? And they seemed, according to the legends and comparative mythology, they seemed to keep themselves separated from one another. They kept the women separated from the men and vice versa. So the women we had a tendency to make up our own stories about them as well. This turned into the Amazonians, the Valkyries, I forgot, there's another name for them, but I'll probably get back to it. Anyhow, let's get back to the superheroes. Thor, right? Thor is a great example. He's obviously a god, so we'll just skip over that. Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan is a completely blue being. And the ancient gods, that's one of the ways that we have characterized them, is we depict them as being blue. It doesn't mean that they were blue, but something had happened so that some people in some cultures saw them as blue, or knew that they had, the ability to appear as a bluish. Typically a very dark blue, not as light as, as the Smurfs are. We've got the Joker, right? The Joker represents the ivory skin color, the ivory face. For more information about what the god's skin color was, I know there's a lot of debate out there, especially amongst the different races of humans, because we love to fight with one another. But like I said, it changed and it varied based on perspective, based on conditions, based on the time. All of these things came into play. Also, there's something to take into consideration, which are the Svartalfheims. The Svartalfs, or the Dwarven race, or the Drow, or the Black Elves, essentially, the Black El. And we've got the Joker, who represents the pale, pasty white skin. Like, if you've ever seen the movie Prometheus, the aliens, or the Elyon in that movie, they're portrayed as being these pasty white, not Caucasian, but pure white beings, right? Typically, they're not absolutely pure white. They have like a hint of blue in there, or grayish color, you know what I mean? They're sort of an off color, and sometimes they're depicted as sort of having a type of shimmering or a shine to them. And this shine is noticeable because they sort of reflect, depending on the light source that's hitting them, they may reflect different colors as well. So we've got the shining ones. This is also reflected in Pennywise. Pennywise represents the class of El, who are the vampiric class. They are the rulers who don't have your best interests at heart. They're in it for themselves. So Pennywise, the White Walkers, if you watch Game of Thrones, the White Walkers are a direct reference to these ivory-skinned ancient ones or whatnot. We've got Captain America. Captain America, who pretty much dresses in blue. He's got a huge star on his forehead. What does a star have to do with America? Nothing, right? But the star represents the angels, or the El, or the gods, or the beings from the stars. That's why he has that. And he used to have like wings coming off the sides of his head, I think. Pretty sure that's how he was depicted. We've got the Green Arrow, who is an archer wearing green, which is associated with Aurora Borealis, which is the North Pole, which is currently where many of these species are probably living right now. And we've got Spider-Man. Spider-Man's an easy one because he shoots his magical web by throwing out the devil horns every time, right? I mean, like, I've talked about this. It's very hard to do that because he has a mechanism right here and he has to press on it. But to press on it, your pinky, do you see how my pinky comes down as well? He's never portrayed as doing that. It's full on like pow, like, and it's perfectly straight and whatnot. But anyhow, Spider-Man, he's casting his webs. Casting a web is symbolic of casting a spell, which is invisible, which is typically a command or a law or a principle, things that you cannot touch, they're not tangible, but they exist in your mind. They're concrete, and they manipulate your reality. And that's what these spider webs are, because you don't see them, but when you walk into a spider web, it sure has an effect on your physical body and your path, right? Let's see here. He also wears blue and red, which together make purple. Typically, they'll separate blue and red. And Spider-Man's picture. I'm going to show you guys this. Let's go ahead and do a quick screen share, because I want to show you Spider-Man's logo. Where is it? There we go. Okay. Let's type in Spider-Man's logo. Oops. Well, anyhow, so here it is right here, right? Now, if we take this logo and we also do a quick search for the magnetosphere, you will see a very interesting similarity. All you have to do is just turn the Spider-Man logo to the left, and we have the magnetosphere. Okay? I don't think that's any coincidence whatsoever, right? This is the Spider-Man logo, is the magnetosphere. And that gets into an entirely different topic, which we're not going to talk about tonight. So let's move forward. All right, where were we? Superheroes. If you're just joining us, we are talking about the L and all of the direct relations that we have to the L. Who are the L? Or like the video says, who the hell are the L? As in, who the hell do they think they are? You know, that's kind of another way that I meant that. All right, so let's go beyond superheroes and supervillains, and let's talk about reptilians for a brief moment, because I've already touched on this. The reptilians, the gods, the El, the aliens, those beings who came down from heaven, who had far greater technology, and so on and so forth. We know the story. Some tribal people have referred to them as being sort of a reptilian race. Not even tribal. You don't have to be tribal, because this is a trendy word. Okay? We call them reptilians because of their scales. In reality, they very well may be comprised of a different element than we are. They may not be carbon-based, but might be silica-based or silicon-based. Silicon is like crystal. Okay? So can you imagine a being who is silicon-based, a crystalline type of being? And this is really interesting because, like I said, that movie that I had watched called Beyond the Sky, whenever they had met the aliens in that movie, actually, let me see if I could pull up an image of it for you. Here we are. Oh, let's type in alien. Okay, well, it's not popular enough that it actually has. Okay, I think it's these guys, maybe. Anyhow, in the movie, they meet these aliens, okay? And the aliens, they say, who are you, to the aliens? And the aliens say, we are the product of human evolution over thousands of years. And then they say, our ego crystallized and we became angry with reason. This is a direct quote from the movie. I remember it. The aliens are saying, our ego crystallized. What an interesting way to refer to that, right? Because the aliens represent the crystalline beings or the silicon beings. And they say that their ego crystallized. Well, a part of the ego is the identification of self, right? Separateness. Oftentimes alien races, as we see them on television, when they get very, very, very advanced, they tend to either become much like the Vulcans, who have basically taken their ego and kind of removed it. They've taken their individuality and removed it. And they have this mindset that is sort of computer-like. And it says the ends justify the means. Okay? So these aliens say that their ego was crystallized. Well, that's interesting because it's directly related to mud fossil theory. But the other thing is the crystallization or the petrification of your pineal gland. Okay? For those of you who don't know, you have a gland in between your eyes, back in your head, in your brain, called the pineal gland. It's symbolized by the pine cone. Here, let's go ahead and pull this up. All right, so the pineal gland. Here's some images of it right there. And the pineal gland, essentially, it has the ability to secrete particular chemicals that get us more in touch with what we would call, and what we used to call, the spirit world, the energetic, our oneness, our connectedness with other things. It also helps us in our creative side, in our imagination, which is a very powerful tool. I'm going to get that fly. So anyhow, they are calcifying or crystallizing our pineal gland, which also may be a reference, and that's for you, Brandy. Brandy's one of my patrons, and she actually pointed out the movie Beyond the Sky to me, and I found it to be very interesting. And like I said, one of the main characters in that movie, the Native Americans called her Elu, which is directly related to how we started this entire video. So let's move forward and look into some other things here. Next, we're going to be talking about... I'm sorry. Still talking about the reptilians. So, oftentimes today, when we portray our superheroes, when you look at their armor, some superheroes don't really need armor. Like Superman, you know? His cape, his costume, all of that, it's very scaly. If you pull up a close-up of it... Well, let's just go ahead and do that while I have the screen sharing on. Suit, I guess, right? Okay, now look at the suit. You can already see it's very scaly. It doesn't have to be like that. He is like impenetrable. He's the man of steel, which is also a really interesting nomenclature, right? The man of steel, the man made of rock. You know, this is also a veiled reference to mud fossil theory, turning into rock and turning back into the earth, etc. But look at this. He's got sort of scales all over, and they do this with many of the superheroes. Just for kicks and giggles, let's go ahead and let's look at Thor, right? I think I actually had a picture of Thor's suit brought up, but as you can see, he's got scales. This is unnecessary, you know what I mean? And it's like tightly fitting, so it's like wrapped right around his muscles and whatnot. This does not represent armor at all. Okay, this is where we got the idea for chainmail and scale armor is from the gods, right? So they're trying to represent the scaly gods, or the silicon-based gods, the crystalline gods. These gods, these El, must have been, in comparison to a carbon-based being like humanity, like humans, it must have been truly a superhero, a godlike being, you know, a fantastic beast, if you will, because of their actual composition of their body. Okay, so I think I've touched on that enough. What else do we have here? Oh, good. Let's talk about the crocodile men, okay? There are some tribes who have what are known as the crocodile men. And the crocodile men are these tribal members, and they scar their body purposefully. Now, you'll end up seeing over here, you probably have already seen it, the movie Black Panther. Whenever Black Panther fights one of the other guys, he takes off his shirt and he's got these scars all over. It's purposefully done. The tribal people scar themselves in order to pay homage to and look like their gods. The scaly reptile fish gods, right? The gods who had this sort of scaly skin. They do it all over their bodies, to their faces. You know, that's why they do it. You ever wonder? I mean, have you ever seen, we've got some people who are of African descent that work in one of these places nearby, and you can see their skin is scarred all over the place, but it's not to draw attention. It's not so much what it began as is paying homage to the gods, basically. And they are known as the crocodile men, and these people will just put gashes in their body all over, and when the gashes heal, they create these sort of scaly appearance. And that's why they do it. Not to look like crocodiles, not because they revere the crocodile, but because they revere their makers. They revere the beings who came before. And next, we're going to talk about angels. So, angels. Angels are directly related to the El. They are the El. They are a class of the El, or the Elohim, or the Elven race. One of the ways that's easy to find this out is to simply look at the names of various angels. They almost always will have, without fail, the word El incorporated into their name. For some examples are Azazel, Uriel, Samael, Mikael or Michael, Raphael or Raphael, and we also have another angel classes which is called the Seraph or the Seraphim. I believe I actually put that up on the screen earlier where it's highlighted. It talks about the Seraphim. Seraphim, remember, im is plural, so the seraphs basically are the fiery serpents. That's what they're known as. Now, when they're described, they're talking about these angelic beings that have like 6 arms, by the way, which is also very interesting. The number 6 is tied in there. But they are the fiery serpents, or the light lizards, if you will, the light reptilians. Okay, does this sound strikingly familiar to any other types of characters that you may have heard of? Right? They are the fiery serpents, or the serpents of light, or the shining ones, the illuminated, right? These are all tying in together. Now, when we talk about The Shining, for example, think of the movie that had Jack Nicholson, The Shining. Stephen King writes about what he calls The Shining, which is basically a paranormal ability that a person may have. Paranormal abilities that people have quite often come from people who are directly related to the L. Oh, that's way too small. You can't see it. Okay, so that's the seraph definition. But you can just check that out on Wikipedia or anything you'd like to there. Where was I? The Shining ones. Oh, that's right. Stephen King's The Shining, okay? So why is it called The Shining? There's the crocodile, man. It's called The Shining because the gods shone. They were shining in comparison to us. We don't shine that much. Now, I'm shining a little bit because you can kind of see, I shaved and my face is kind of reflecting the light that's coming from over here. Well, how much more would a silica or silicon-based being shine? A crystalline type of structure shine. Can you imagine? Now, to shine is where we get our word for Christ or Christos. What they would do is they would anoint particular individuals, and they would take crocodile oil, basically, and they would rub it and anoint a person, making them a Christ or a shining one, which is what that word kind of breaks down into. So we've got the shining one. So when you look at the shining, or somebody who possesses the shine or whatnot, what that is it's like the X-Men, like all of the X-Men, they have the shine. They have these abilities, they have these paranormal, super abilities, if you will. Now, most of us, sadly, we don't hone in on our abilities. Those of us who do have them, we don't really trust in them. We don't practice them. We don't strengthen them. So over time, guess what? We end up losing our abilities, our shine, our whatnot. But that's just sort of me rambling. Typically possessing extraordinary abilities are the Rh negative, or those who are more directly related to the gods themselves, or perhaps to the Titans, who are an altogether different subject, okay? When I'm talking about the L, I am talking mostly about the gods, about all of these characters that we've been discussing so far. I am excluding the Titans because while they themselves qualify as L, they are vastly different from the L. Okay, so I'll have to do another thing on Titans another time. But I have talked about Titans a lot. Now, let's talk about demons. We've talked about angels a little bit. And the angels, of course, they can fly, and they're representatives of God, which means that they have a leader L, right? And they report, and they have their structure, etc. And the word demon was not always demonized, believe it or not. And there's another good example of the crocodile man there. But the word demon meant genius. Can you believe that? The word demon conveyed the idea of somebody who is exceptionally intelligent, or a genius. And it was a synonym for God, or guardian angel, because an angel is simply an L. These are all the same beings, right? The word demon breaks down into the word de, which means God, and mon, which means man, right? The God-man. It didn't imply somebody that those beings were evil or good. Like I said, it all depends on what they do for us, right? How we see them. Oh, there's another good example of Aquaman. See his skin? He represents the fish god, which we'll actually talk about that here next. Okay, so demon is another variation of the L, and it used to mean or convey genius or a guardian angel or a god-man, also known as fates or the fates, right? The guardian angels were seen as the fates, people who kind of carried along with us. And typically, when you read stories of the ancient El, they very rarely went somewhere by themselves. They usually had some sort of a partner, some sort of a sidekick, just like our superheroes do, right? These are the guardian angels. They are there to guard over the other one and to help them out. Or if they were assigned to a human, they would help the human out. Let's see here. But typically they wouldn't really help out humans unless they were directly related or of some sort of importance. So the fates are directly related. The word fate and the concept of the fates is directly related to the Fae. Now, listen to how I'm pronouncing this. The Fae, or the Eri, those of the air, or my airy ones. Basically, I know that's kind of a stretch, but the Fae are related to the Eri, those of the air. This is where we get the word Ariel, right? Ariel, which is another angelic type word. Also happens to be a mermaid, which I think we're going to talk about next. But they are the Vaeri, or of the Aryans, or of the ones who are of the air. They are the fairies, like the fairy godmother type being, That's where we get the word fairy from. Homer, who is an ancient writer, refers to the gods of Olympus as demons, believe it or not. It doesn't mean that he was saying they were all evil, but he was just saying that's what they called them. They were godmen. They were the demons. And the word Aang. I know one of you had left a comment. I rarely go over the comments these days, but I actually did happen upon one of you guys left a comment asking me to break down the word angel and what does it mean. Aang, right? A-N-G conveys the meaning to deviate from the original path. That's all it really kind of implies, to deviate from the original path. This gives rise to words like angle, like a right angle, to deviate from that original line, that original path. Now you're bending. It also conveys being bent, to bend, right? To get angry is to sort of go left, right? You're on a good path, you change that path. Now you're angry. You're angry. Angle. Anglo-Saxon. English. Right? Our language, English, is a bent language. It is a language that has taken a hard left. It has deviated from its original path. So let's talk about the fish gods. Let me just check in. Probably should check in with the chat. I like to look at the chat just in case there's something wrong with the audio or something. I've been talking, what if I was talking for a half hour and I had the mic muted, and in the chat I would expect people to say, oh my gosh, Jay, check this out. But anyhow, I'm going to say hello to everyone in the chat towards the end of the video as well. And we probably have about 20 minutes left to talk about a few more subjects. Next, we're going to talk about the fish gods. The fish gods, also known as the Dag-On. Remember, On, O-N, in ancient languages means of thee, right? So the Dag-On, D-A-G, is pronounced just like the animal, dog, okay? Og, the Dag-On, right? It doesn't mean those of the dog. Dog, in ancient languages, means fish. I know it's hard to understand because we confuse everything. And like I said, English is a language that deviated from the original path. So, we have the Dag-On, those of the fish. And it sounds a lot like Drag-On, actually. We have the dog star, Sirius. If you've ever looked up at the night sky, typically you can see Sirius. It will be up there right behind Orion. And I believe, I want to say Leo, somewhere around there. But you can tell that it's Sirius, the star, because it flashes red, white, and blue. Now, that's very symbolic on its own, and that might make a lot of sense now as to why places like America love the colors red, white, and blue. Or maybe when you're getting pulled over by the cops and you see the red, white, and blue flashing like a distant star right behind you, right? Anyhow, that's Sirius. And Sirius is the star system that the Nomo were from. Who are the Nomo? There is a tribe named the Dogon, those of the fish, right? And they revered, and their gods were known as the Nomo, or Nomo translates loosely into those who take in water, or those who drink, or cause to drink. But what it really meant was the fish gods, okay? The ones that breathe water, the ones that were amphibious. And the Nomo were the gods of the Dogon, okay? And they were said to be from the Sirius star system. Or, if you break down the word Sirius, it's simply Sar. Remember Sar? Sar means ruler, right? The Sar-E, Siri, the E sound, it just means possessive. It means mine. So, my ruler, Siri. And then the us is the Latinized suffix, right? Basically meaning possession or belonging to, right? Anyhow, that's the Sirius star system. And the fish gods came down to Earth. They met the Dogon, and they had explained to them, we come from that region up there by that star system, the dog star. That's where we get the dog days of summer. It's got nothing to do with dogs, but everything to do with fishing and good fishing weather. Anyway, we also have the Jesus fish. I'm going to have to screen share this one because I definitely want to show a good example of what we're going to be going into, which is religion. And I mean, all of this stuff is going to come up here on the slideshow, but this is the Jesus fish, right? This is the fish that represents Jesus. Well, why in the world would Jesus, the God, be represented by a fish? Because he's a fish god. That's exactly why. It's got nothing to do with stories of 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread and any of this type of stuff, or making you fishers of men. All of that is verbiage that is designed to pay homage to the fish gods. Now keep in mind, it's not an insult. They're not really fish gods, just like they're not really reptilians. But let me type in Nomo. This is how the Dogon drew their gods. This is a picture of their fish god. It's the exact same thing as the Jesus fish, except this one is standing upright, as it should be, because it represents bipedal beings who were fish-like, scaly, shimmering, just like a fish would be if you took it out of the water and you held it in the light, but they walked on 2 legs. And this is why we have, things, aquatic, godlike beings. Aquaman, we've got Starbucks. Oops. Anyhow, you get the point. Starbucks is the mermaid, who is really Ishtar. And she's got the star on her forehead, just like Captain America, right? And she's got the 2 sort of rivers coming down from the side of her head. I know we're supposed to assume that that's hair, but it really looks like water, doesn't it? So she's got these 2 waters coming down from her head, and she's got these 2 tails. Next time you go into Starbucks, please pick their brains and ask them why. Ask them about the logo, because odds are they don't know, and maybe they'll be interested in knowing more about it, But she has 2 tails because she has 2 legs. Those are her legs, okay? She doesn't have fins. She has feet, but she is scalene in structure. She looks kind of fish-like in her skin, okay? And these are the fish gods of old. Another one of the fish god was Dagon. Let's see if I can find a good representative here. Dagon. Let's type in fish god. Okay, Dagon. Remember, dag is really dog or dog, right? Which is fish. Dagon means of the fish. Fish people, right? And this is how he was portrayed. Dagon. There's also a city, Dagon-Ur, etc. Here's also Dagon. The priests of Dagon would wear a fish cape and a fish head hat, or mitre, right? We still have this today, and I'll go ahead and show you. You've probably seen the picture. Let's see, let's go ahead and type in fish mitre. Okay, boom. So, appropriately enough, we've got the picture comparing the priest of Dagon with the priest of Jehovah or Yahweh, Enki, etc., and so on and so forth, right? This is nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. These are the fish gods, and that's why Jesus is represented by the logo, the symbol of the fish. It's as simple as that, really. Let me see what else I have as far as notes on the fish gods. Oh, so mermaids, right? Mermaids are just a characterization, a caricature, a drawing, a cartoonified version of the L, okay? Those aquatic beings, those beings that have sort of a silicon-like skin composition, and they sort of have scales, or they do have scales. You also have scales, in case you didn't know. If you take a microscope and you really zoom in on your skin, it will have like these diamond kind of shapes to it, okay? But the gods, their scaly skin was much more prominent, and that's why it stood out, and that's why they developed names for them. We develop names for them, like the lizard people, the fish gods, etc. Anything that's scaly, we kind of relate that to the gods. So we also have the mermen. Mer means sea. So if you see the word mer in front of something, M-E-R, typically it's related to the water somehow. So mermen and merwomen. These are the gods. These are the El, or the elite, who live by the laws of the ocean. I wonder why. I wonder why they choose to live by the laws of the ocean, and they happen to be called fish gods, and they are also related to mermen and aquatic beings. This is all very interesting, and it kind of ties together, don't you think? They are used to a watery environment, it would seem. Oh, let me stop screen sharing here. Boom. All right, we're going to get to this guy in just a second. So the fish gods, Dagon, the priest, Dog. Dog means fish. It doesn't mean dog. It means fish. And the Dagon are those of the fish. We also have the Sirius star system, mermen, merwomen, mermaid. How about Merlin? Right? Same thing. Merlin was this wizard, and the wizards are just L. They are a descriptor that we give to the L. And I think I'm going to get into wizards and witches here in just a bit. But Merlin, the ancient wizard of old, the Dogon tribe, the Nomo, and the Jesus fish. Next, we're going to be talking about the Vanir and the Azir. There are two classes of these gods. It comes from Nordic mythology, which I really enjoy. The Vanir, let's start with them because they're more fun for me to talk about, basically. But Van, V-A-N, Van, means beautiful. That's all. It means attractive. It means pretty, handsome, etc. This is why we have the name Venice, Van-is, which means beautiful place or something of that nature. We have Vanir. If you have anything that is veneer in the house, it is something decorative. It is pretty. It is beautiful, etc. So the Vanir, and this is also where we get the word vain, someone who just thinks about their beauty all of the time. Vanity. I believe there was a Smurf called Vanity, right? The Smurfs represent the gods of old. And their story, the Vanir were the beautiful ones, which is really interesting because there were these two main classes of gods in Nordic mythology, or history is really what it is. The Azir and the Vanir. Well, if the Vanir were the beautiful ones, that kind of implies something about the Azir, don't you think? Or at least how the Vanir saw themselves. But the Vanir were the beautiful ones, the elven standard of beauty. This is why we do the things we do. Usually, okay? This is why we beautify our face. This is why we try to make our eyes bigger and more beautiful and elongate our necks, and we scar our skin, and we just want to do our best to look more like and be more like the gods, the creators, the ones that made us. This is the elven standard of beauty, is what I call it. Those are the Vanir. Or if you don't want to say Vanir, because IR is pluralized in the north, just like how I said IM is pluralized for like the Arabic areas, IR is also plural, okay? But it's unimportant. You could put an S on it and it would be the word Vans, right? Just like the shoe company. Do you think the shoe company was named after a style of automobile? I don't think so. I think it was named after the gods, right? The gods, we name all of our modes of travel after the gods. So is any surprise that we name Vans, which means and pays homage to the Vanir, just like Nike, the god of victory. We do this all over the place and all of the time. All right, so let's move forward here. Where was I? Oh, the fish gods. That's right. So we did the fish gods. We did the Vanir, the Azir, those of Oz. Oz is strength, the strong ones, the immortals, those of strong spirit is really what it conveys, and that means immortal. So those from Oz, those from a strong land or the land of Oz, they are the Azir. They're also known as the immortals, Venusians. You know, remember how I said those from Venus, they are the Venusians? They are the Vanir, the Venusians, etc. The Ve. All right, let's move on to the next one, which is going to be the Valkyrie and Amazonians. They are separate from the males. I did touch on this earlier, so we'll go over this briefly. But I talked about the Smurfs' Lost Village, how they separate the sexes, the males and the females. The Smurfs have a Smurf hat. Okay, I forgot what the hat is called. If you remember in the chat, please let me know. But they have this sort of conical hat. Okay, it's this hat that kind of leans forward and is sort of pointed at the top. Okay, sometimes it's rounded off, sometimes it's very pointed. This is important because this has made its way into our society and our lives all over the place. We just don't recognize it. I'm going to give you some examples. So we've got the Smurf hat, which is the conical hat, which is the cone hat for the cone heads. There was a movie, there was a famous skit on Saturday Night Live about this alien race called the Coneheads. And there are actually people all around the world in various tribes who will purposefully conify their head. They'll shape their head into a cone shape to be and look like the gods. In ancient Egypt, they had these hats that just extended a ridiculous length. Right? There's no need for your hat. I mean, look at my hat. My hat covers my head. So that's the shape of my hat, is the shape of my head. Right? But hats, we started wearing hats that don't fit the shape of our head. But they paid homage to those who did. Like when we invented the conical hat. We started wearing hats just like that, like the Smurfs do. A great example of putting on the conical hat is the dunce cap. Okay? A long time ago, before the world was so politically correct and people did whatever people wanted to do, when you were in school and you got in trouble because you were not being smart, they would put you over in the corner, seclude you, and they would make you wear this dunce cap, which is a conical hat. Not to humiliate, but because the conical hat was associated with wisdom. This is why witches wear the conical hat. They are the Wiccans, or the word Wicca, that's not accurately pronounced. The double C, right? CC, usually it has a sh sound to it, like Gucci, like a ch sound. Gucci, cappuccino, the double C's, right? So Wicca is really witcha. All right, this is where we get the word witch from. They are the wise ones, the vich, the wizards, the wise ones. They are the wise. Anyway, you get the point. Wizards. And they all wear the conical hat because they had heads that followed suit, basically. Let's see, where else was I here? We got the Vanir, the Azir, the Smurfs, conical hats, cone heads, like the aliens, the dunce cap. Oh, the wizard hat, witch. The witch, I explained that, comes from Wicca, cappuccino, etc. Oh, Harry Potter. How about... Oh, I already talked about that. Okay. So I talked about Harry Potter. I'm just going over my notes here. In Harry Potter, they have this technology that is seen as magic. But in reality, we are starting to be able to emulate certain aspects of the fantasy world of magic, like the moving pictures in Harry Potter, right? Taking a still picture and making it seem as if it's alive and moving all on its own. That's technology that we're coming into now. Another thing about Harry Potter, which is going to take us into the next subject, is Voldemort. Okay? Voldemort, first of all, is this pasty white skin color. He doesn't have defined facial features, okay? Because Voldemort is a shapeshifter and does not want you to really know exactly what he looks like. But even more importantly about Voldemort is the fact that he's called the nameless one, basically. I forgot how they say it in the movies, like the one whose name is not mentioned, or something of that nature. That is very interesting because we're going to talk about the gods of religion, actual gods. When we say the word God, this is what we're talking about. But before we get into that, I want to break down the word Voldemort for you. Vol is not V-O-L. It's B, okay? And I'll save you the time. Just trust me. Do some research on it. V is also pronounced, the B letter is pronounced as V, or sometimes W is pronounced as V. You know what I mean? But it's Bol-de-Mort. Bol is Baal or Baal. Baal is one of the Canaanite gods of the Bible who Yahweh or Enki was against, okay? They were not, he didn't turn his face towards them, which means that he was enemies with them. And that was Baal or Baal. De mort is just French, and it means of death, okay? Mort, mord, etc. The Mord Sith, if you read the book, the Sword of Truth series. Anyway, Bol, Baal de Mort. It literally means Lord of Death. Okay, that's going to be important here in a minute. But let's talk about how he is referred to as the one whose name we don't mention, right? And this is a theme that we see quite often, actually. The same theme is picked up whenever we're talking about the evil gods of the Lord of the Rings series, which is Morgoth and Sauron. Now, Sauron, you already know what it means, right? We've gone over this. Sor, the word sor or sour just means leader, right? It means leader. And then on means of. So of the leader. Sauron, those of the leaders. But Sauron and Morgoth were typically referred to as those whose names we don't say, okay? Now, this directly relates to some of the world's religions. Some of the gods of the religions of the world either insisted that you not say their name, or we imposed that upon ourselves, basically saying that we're not good enough to mention their name, or by mentioning their name we would invoke that particular god. They would hear us, because they have advanced technology and probably a little healthier, and they can hear very well. Or they can tune in if they'd like to. We put our focus on their name and we connect ourselves with them. They are the gods whose names we don't mention. Now, one of the commandments in the Bible is, you shall not take my name in vain. Okay? For more information about this, please see my video called Enki and the 10 Commandments. But that commandment, don't take my name in vain, does not mean that, what we think it means. What it literally transliterates into is, you shall not make my name come to nothing, which means you shall not make my name forgotten, essentially. I want you to know my name, to use my name. You shall not erase my name from the history books, which is funny because that's exactly what ended up happening to the God of the Bible. His name was erased, okay? They don't say the name, you know what I mean? It's the God whose name we don't say. And that's just one of them. Okay, so the nameless ones. They have descriptors, okay? All of these gods, they have descriptors. We call them by all kinds of foreign words that are really just descriptors of some sort of attribute that they have. They don't really have typically personal names. And why should they? Why should we? They're just descriptors. When you're born, your name is pretty much meaningless these days, but back a long time ago, they were descriptors that described people. That's how you get your last name from. That's how you get your name of authority from, which is your surname or your sar name, right? Your name of your profession, essentially. So the gods were the nameless ones, etc. They were also the faceless ones. The gods were not to be copied or replicated or painted. They did not want their likeness out there. They didn't want people knowing what they look like. Isn't that something interesting as well? This is the same attribute that the El tend to have. They tend to be hidden. They tend to be more reclusive. They don't like being out in the public, and understandably so. I understand that. Some people can relate to that. But anyhow, these were the hidden ones. They were the gods who did not want to be copied. They didn't want any images of them to be made. Now, my theory on this is that the gods, or the El, they had advanced technology. They understood how to transfer the soul from one vessel into another, which means, hey, if you draw a picture of what JayDreamerZ looks like now, if I figured out how to transfer my soul into an entirely different body, I'm not going to look the same anymore, So instead, I'm going to leave you descriptors. I'm going to leave you stories. I'm going to leave you other things to know that you know it's me when you see me again. So anyhow, what else? They are called the faceless ones, the nameless ones. They are not to be replicated or painted or copied or have their images portrayed. They are those who must not be named. They are the watchers, not participators. They're the watchers. They're supposed to stay out of our business, you know. They're supposed to watch from the sidelines. That's why they keep their, typically, that's why they keep their noses out of our business. That's why they don't want their face in the limelight. They're not supposed to be in our business. They're not supposed to be in our lives. They are supposed to observe, to watch, to sort of guide invisibly, if you will. And that's why they started off being known as the Watchers. And that's why they don't need names. They don't need a personal relationship, with individuals, etc. Because think about it. How many of them are there versus how many of us are there? I can tell you from personal experience, just having over 25,000 subscribers, when you have thousands of people who are all trying to get your attention and your opinion on things and want to talk to you, etc., that eats up your day like this. So imagine how a god would feel walking amongst humanity, right? No, they don't want that. They want to go into hiding. They want to be left alone. And they will influence from time to time, but pretty much their job is to watch. They don't need names, basically. So, what else do we have here? Let's see. Gothic, which is godlike. I believe I mentioned that. Basically, Gothic architecture means god-like architecture, or architecture that emulates that of the gods, of the El, of the Goth, of the God, or of the God, right? The fortunate ones, the gods, the gads. And Gothic architecture is typically melancholy architecture, architecture, right? Texture of the architecture. The word arc is very important, okay? Because it plays into the archers, the archon, the place of the arc. You ever wonder why McDonald's has the arches? What the hell does arches have to do with food at all? Nothing. Zero, The arches are symbolic of the place where the gods live, the place of the ark or the arch, whether it be beyond the arch or the place directly above the arch, which would be, some would say, the North Pole type area. Anyhow, the place of the arches, or the archon, or Arcadia, or the arcade. The arcade is the place where you go to let your imagination run wild and your creativity play out. And there's fantasy, and there's this and that. It is the place of the arcs, archbishops, etc., and so on and so forth. Let's stop talking about arches. So, the architecture is sort of melancholy. It's Gothic. It's very large and opulent. This is because it is designed after how the gods wanted their temples and their structures and their cities to look. Okay? Like the land of Oz. Very sharp, very crystalline, very cathedral looking, magnificent, large, etc. This is Gothic. It is of the gods. What else do we have here? Oh, often stone as well. I did talk about the gargoyles, which relates to mud fossils, etc. There's also a race of beings, the El, are also known as the Proselines. Proselene means before the moon. Selene, there's actually a goddess named Selene, or Selena. It means lunar. It means the moon, basically. And the Proselines are the race that existed here on Earth, on our realm, before there was a moon. Often, ancient stories start off this way. They don't say once upon a time. They say once in a time before the moon. That's where that comes from, okay? Once in a time before the moon. Once upon a time before the moon was here. That's how long ago we're talking, and this is how it would begin, Now, science teaches us something totally different. The moon's always been with us. As long as humanity's been here, as long as life's been here, pretty much, the moon has been here, But it's not true. The moon has been created, it has been constructed, and it is not what we are told that it's a flying rock above our heads, okay? But there was a race known as the Proselines, which means they were here before the moon, which also makes me wonder if they were here before the sun as well, because the moon has a definite effect on us, right? We tend to be more base, more animalistic. That's where we get werewolves and things like that when the moon is full. The moon produces its own light, etc. If the vampires, if the El were sensitive to the light of the sun, wouldn't they also be sensitive to the light of the moon? I would think so. But the Proselenes are the race of beings who were here before the moon. Feel free to do some research on that if you'd like to. I also did a video about it. I think it was called Arcadian Sky. I can't remember, but it was all about this particular topic. Now, let's look at the Vulcans. The Vulcans were up on the screen just a moment ago, and that's a race of aliens in the television show called Star Trek. First, I want to talk about the word Vulcan, okay? Vol, like I said, is not vol, but ball, bowl, bahal, okay? Just like volcano is not really with a V. It was originally with a B. It's the Balkano, because Khan means priest. So they were the priests of Baal, and Baal was the lord of light, the lord of fire, etc. So that's why we call volcanoes what they are called. They are the Vulcan, right? They are of the Vulcan, which the Khan is the priest, like leprechaun, the scaled priest, right? So the Vulcans are representatives of the El race, those who had Baal, which translates into the Lord, or Baal, basically. So, Vulcans are sort of jokingly referred to as space elves in the Star Trek community, and rightly so, because we all know the prominent feature of the Vulcans are their pointed ears. Not just their pointed ears. Typically, they're portrayed typically by Caucasians or white people, and this is what they do when they try to get somebody in the role to fit more of that that albino type skin color. Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with being Caucasian at all. But the Vulcans they have very, very long lives. That's why they say, live long and prosper. So a long life, immortality, and prosperity are both directly related to the beings with the pointy ears and who give you the symbol of the V. Remember the 6? The Vav, the hook. This is what they're flashing when they do this. They say, live long, immortal, and prosper, prosperous, right? Rich and famous, etc. If you want to know, by the way, the reason they do this is because this is half of the symbol that the Jews use when they bless and they put their hands on someone's head like that. And this is where Jay-Z and all these people, that's why they do this. It gets into the Illuminati and all the symbolism, but I don't really want to talk about the music industry right now. Let's talk about the Vulcans, or the Bahal Khans, right? Now, not a lot of people know this, but the Vulcans used to be one race with this other race called the Romulans. The Romulans and the Vulcans, they split at some point, and the Romulans adapted differently than the Vulcans did. So they have a similar appearance, but typically the Romulans are a darker color, and while the Vulcans are very direct. That's another thing that we know about Vulcans, like Dr. Spock, right? Mr. Spock, see you got the pointy ears on the Alf over there, the alien life form that has a haircut just like a person because, they're humanoid, or we are godlike, etc. Anyhow, the Vulcans are kind of cold in character. They sort of almost sound robotic, right? It's because they have had such long lives that they have basically taken their ego, like we talked about in the other movie, and they have solidified. They've taken control of their ego and removed it. They know how to express emotion, but they have kept their emotions secluded, okay? So they deal in logic. They are very logical minded. The ends justify the means, They don't get very excited about stuff because that's a sign of immaturity, They can still be excited, but they contain it. They have learned how to balance themselves for a long period of time. The Romulans, which are genetically basically the brothers of the Vulcans, okay, going back way far back in time before they split into two races, the Romulans are a shade darker than the Vulcans. I jokingly refer to Romulans as the Mexican Vulcans, basically, okay? And that's not like, to make fun of Mexicans or anything, but they are brown, basically. The Romulans look like Vulcans with a tan. So the Romulans are this race of the L beings who are darker, and they express more of the right-hand path of emotion, right? So we've got these two beings, one representing the left-hand path, which is the Vulcans, which is the ends justify the means. Then you have the Romulans, who are very emotional, and they can tend to get carried away, but they're both related. They're interrelated. The word Romulan comes from the word Romulus. And, welcome, subscriber. And Romulus is where we get our word Rome from. Romulus, there's a story of Romulus and Remus, okay? And these are some ancient gods who are twins. Interestingly enough, just like the Vulcans and the Romulans being sort of brothers, being sort of twins, that evolved differently and warred with one another. Also, you have Enki, which is the fish god, which is, I think, the god of the Bible and some other things, and his family warring against his brother or half-brother, Enlil. And these are the Anunnaki figureheads. They are the fathers of the Anunnaki, basically. So the story is being played out, in Star Trek, in the form of the Vulcans or the Bahal Khans and the Romulans, those of Rome, or Romulus, who is the twin brother to Remus. Rome, live long and prosper, say space elves. Another thing, by the way, about Romulans and Vulcans both, if they have these arched eyebrows. There's the arc again, right? And you'll see this in a lot of people who have gone through higher degrees of Freemasonry and the Illuminati. They will purposefully manipulate their eyebrows to sort of give them this high arch. A good example of that would be like Bill Nye the Science Guy. You know, like he started off eyebrows kind of normal, but as he advanced and the older he's getting, now he's got these sort of vampiric kind of, you know, Vulcan arches for his eyebrows, and that's done purposefully too to emulate the gods. Or the L. I'm trying to catch up where I am on my notes here. Okay, Vulcans. Oh, Count Olaf as well, right? Remember I said Olaf is just a play on words for olive or Aleph or the elven race, etc. Count Olaf also has those same arched kind of eyebrows, as does Dracula. Dracula's used to be portrayed in the same way. Let's talk about one more race from the Star Trek world, which is Klingons. To cling onto something means to be hooked into it, to be attached to it, to be of something. So the word Klingon itself is a direct representation or name that implies hook. It is the hook race, okay? They cling onto things. They are attached to. And, interestingly enough, the Klingons have a weapon. I don't remember what it's called, but there's a picture of it on the thumbnail. And their weapon is a hook. It's a double-sided huge hook, basically. A batla, I think it's called. But anyhow, that's their weapon. They carry the hook. And one of the most famous Klingons, I think this Star Trek character has appeared in more Star Trek episodes than any other Star Trek character, is the Klingon named Worf. Why would they name him Worf? Everything is chosen specifically with purpose, okay? These things are not just gibberish that people make up, okay? They have their roots in reality and history and fact. So, Worf sounds exactly like dwarf, right? The dwarven race. And then dwarf. Dwarves were born, you know who dwarves are, like Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, right? Like I said, the Svartalfs, the Black Elves, are the dwarves. Worf just happens to be played by a black guy, you know. Actually, lots of them are typically, the Klingons are typically portrayed as, they're usually portrayed by black people, basically. Just like the Vulcans are typically played by Caucasians, okay? Same type of deal. There are little breadcrumbs of truth that they're using in order to feed you back your reality as fantasy, okay? Here is a perfect example. This guy's name is Volk, and he is one of the Klingons. You can see him there with his sort of question mark weapon, his little hook, right? Because he is a Klingon. And let's see, we've got Worf. Let me talk about Volk. Volk is the one you just saw. He is the exception. He is albino. He has ivory-colored skin, and therefore he's sort of like hated by his fellow Klingon brothers or whatnot, right? Now, the interesting thing about Volk is that he calls himself the son of none, right? The son of none. Now, what an interesting way to refer to yourself as, right? We've got this albino sort of leader, rebel of the Klingons, and he calls himself the son of none. Let me tell you why that's so important. None can also be spelled N-U-N. None, right? Now, N-U-N is properly pronounced Nun, okay? Nun is a letter, also a number in these ancient old languages that are dead today. They are dead languages, essentially, okay? They're used by the dead or by the vampires. But let me get back to my notes here. Nun, or being the son of none, means you are the son of Nun. Nun correlates to the number 50. Why is that important? Because the Anunnaki ranked themselves according to degrees of 10, okay? So the very lowest Anunnaki, or maybe 5s and 10s. Typically, if it was a variance of 5, it was designated for a female, okay? But you had somebody who had 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. Enlil, remember Enki and Enlil? Enki, his number was 40. His rank was 40. And that's why in the Bible you see a lot of 40 symbolism, you know, like 40 days and nights, etc. Enki's number is 50. He was ranked one higher than his brother. So it's interesting to me that this albino-looking Klingon says, I am Volk, the son of Nun. Son of none. Basically, he's saying, I'm the son of Enlil. I am the rightful heir. And that's exactly what the new Star Trek is about. It's about Volk stepping up and saying, I'm going to lead these people. I'm going to lead the Klingons. I have the right. And that's what he's claiming. Where was I? Let's see. Son of none. Oh, none can also mean 0. Or I don't have a father. I don't have a prodigy. You know what I mean? I don't have a family. I don't have a mother and father. I'm the son of none, meaning the son of nobody. Now, how can you be the son of nobody, right? There are a lot of other figures, godlike figures out there, who claim to have been the son of none, the son of nobody, right? I don't have parents. Why would they talk about this? The reason is because it's a play on words, first of all. This is what many Christ-like savior gods claim to have as their origins. Also, remember how I said Anakin Skywalker is directly related to the Anakim or the Anunnaki, right? Anakin, Darth Vader, in all of the Star Wars lore, nobody ever knows who his father is. He has a mother, but no father. It's said that he was born of magic. He was born of the Force, okay? He doesn't have a father. He's the son of none, right? So that's Anakin, many other godlike figures. What does this mean to be the son of none? If you don't have a father, this means you were probably created as opposed to born, right? This means that you were artificially created in like a lab and inseminated into a woman. That a woman may be your mother, but you really don't actually have a father because there was no act going on between a male and a female. And I don't know who my father is. I don't know who those genes even belonged to. You know what I mean? I am the son of none. I was created. I was designed. I am original. I'm different. You know what I mean? It's sort of kind of like it's a bragging right, almost. I know that would be a hard concept for us to understand. But this is insinuating I was created before there was this process known as replication or sex, right? And in the Enuma Elish, or like the sort of Middle Eastern creation stories, some of them, they talk about how the gods did this. This is the exact method they followed. They were geneticists. The El, the strong, the mighty leaders, they were very smart. you almost have to be smart if you're an immortal, if you've been around for a few thousand years. I mean, if you're not smarter than a human being who lives for 100 years, and you're 3,000 years old, what have you been doing with your life, is the question I would ask, you know? Like, I would expect somebody who is 3,000 years old to naturally pick up on some form of intelligence, advanced intelligence, to acquire a lot of information and knowledge, and maybe even to carry a certain maturity with them. But anyhow, this implies that to be the son of none means that you were created before there was a such thing as sex. In the Enuma Elish, or the creation story from Nineveh, basically, it talks about how the gods, when they first created the human species, they were demigods. The first humans were part God. They had God genes, God DNA inside of them, and they were not born between sexual intercourse from the gods, okay? The gods aren't really interested in sex that much. I know we've been told, you know, Zeus comes to mind. Zeus just went around, you know, procreating all over the place. But for the most part, the gods were not very sexual beings. They look at us like animals because we're having sex all of the time. Sorry for the... But anyway, yeah, they're not too interested in sex. So when they first started creating humans, it wasn't sexual. It was just creation. They would inseminate one of the female gods, who became known as the carriers of life, you know, the originators of life. They're the ones who carried the baby to term after they were inseminated. Well, this got kind of old, and the female gods were like, you need to change this. I'm not trying to be pregnant all the time. You know, I'm obviously joking, but what they did is they enabled their creation to have intercourse and to self-replicate. So to say I am the son of none also insinuates I am from a time before there was a such thing as sex, in order to create offspring. So let's move on and let's talk about Atlantis. By the way, if you're just joining us, this picture over here, that was the Vav, the triple Vav, the VVV, and the V is the hook, which is also the number 6. Oh, and this guy over here, check it out. He's got 2 horns. I want to point this out, right? This shows his rank. However many horns these gods had, it shows you what rank they were, and therefore who they were. So if you see a godlike being with 4 horns coming out of his head, each horn represents 10, okay? So if you have 4 horns, that represents Enki. 5 horns represents 50, or Enlil, and so on and so forth. 6 horns would be Anu, their father, etc. Anyhow, Atlantis. Obviously, the Atlanteans, they were the race of the El, who had an advanced form of technology that probably merged with some form of spirituality or energetic principles, and they were very advanced in their technology. These are some things we already accept about the Atlanteans. But what does Atlantis mean? Atlantis. The Atlantis. Those of Atoll is what it means, basically. ATL. For those who live here in the United States, there's a city called Atlanta, and they abbreviate it ATL. Atoll, right? Atoll, let me get back to my notes here. Atoll is directly related to Atlas. Atlas is a titan who held up the heavens. The prefix ATL also is a suffix of Quetzalcoatl. Quetzalcoatl is how most people say it. Quetzalcoatl is the basically one of the gods of South America, okay, of ancient South America. But he is known as the plumed serpent, or the feathered serpent, or the lizard being, the serpent being who can fly by extension. Okay, who is, and that's exact descriptor of the El. And there's the wizard over there with the conical hat and his staff, right? Strong leader, strong teacher with the staff. All right, we're going to push through, see if I can finish this up before I lose my voice. So Quetzalcoatl, right? Quetzalcoatl, Quetzal means flying, basically, or feathered, okay? Coatl means serpent, okay? So ATL is a direct root of the word serpent, or it has some relation to serpent, the serpent being. So Atlantis Atlas, etc. These are all related to the silicon-based beings who had sort of scaly look and a shining, shimmery image and looked a little bit different than we do. All right, let's move on to giants. Giants are very easy. All of these beings, for the most part, were gigantic in comparison to us today. We have been lied to and told the further back in time you go, the smaller mankind gets because we have to de-evolve back into tiny monkeys, right? That's not the truth. The further back in time you go, the bigger mankind gets because mankind started off as demigods. They were part God. They lived for a very long time. We carried many of the attributes of our makers because we have their genes, some of their genes at least, some more than others, in our DNA. One of the other things is that we would be big. We were large. We were very large. But the gods were even larger. The El were larger. The El, or the gods, designated two classes of humanity to begin with. There was the worker class and there was the mason class. The masons were those who would have certain benefits because they would be basically the house slaves to the gods. They were the ones who built the houses of the gods that we now call temples. Now there's a reason why temples are so gigantic. It's not because it's symbolic. It's not a metaphor because that's how big our God is. You know, our God is just huge and you know, he's just so amazing. We're going to build a gigantic house for him or whatnot. It's literal. It's physical and it's actual. Those temples are gigantic. Those statues of the gods are gigantic because the gods were gigantic. They were giants, okay? Like I said, that's in comparison to us today. Not in comparison to their fathers, the Titans, okay, who were much bigger. Okay, so let's talk about, we're going to finish up with the Nephilim, the bloodline, and the return of the gods. So next up is the Nephilim. Nephilim, remember, I am or im means plural. So it's really the Nephal, the many of the Nephal, okay? And Nephal or Nepal means fallen or to fall or to cause to fall. So these are the beings who either fell themselves or caused other things to fall. Now, two theories of that. One is that they were the fallen angels. They fell from grace. They fell into a different density, and now they're the bad guys. They fell from being good into being evil. I can see that, but I think there's probably more of a literal descriptor involved there. The ancient world used to have these huge giant trees everywhere, and somebody cut those trees down. Okay, there are mesas today. There are solidified, petrified mesas, and that's why mesas look like tree trunks, because many of them are tree trunks from an age that we don't know about. So they are known also in their secret societies. They refer to one another as fellers. Hey, fellers! What's a feller? A feller is someone who causes to fall. A feller is like a lumberjack. A feller is somebody who cuts things down. Okay? So, the word feller sort of evolved into the word fellow. So now it's a fellowship instead of a fellowship. And they call themselves the fellows or the fellers, and they are secret society members. They are basically saying, we're going to pay homage to our gods, and oftentimes that's a requirement that you are related to them, but it's okay. So moving forward, we've got the rock fellers as well. Remember I said the mesas petrified, turned into rock, right? The rocks who fell. This is directly related to mud fossil theory. For more information, please check out my mud fossil playlist. That's the old world having turned into stone. Now, as a part of the Nephilim, we have the Norse mythology, Nephelheim. Same place. It's the place of the fallen ones, right? Nephelheim, Nephilim. There's a country called Nepal. That's where these Anunnaki landed. The beings from heaven landed. They fell. They came down. And the place where those people who were native to India and China, they named that place after the gods who came down. They called it the place of the fallen, Nepal. Now, Nepal is very spiritual, and there's a lot of interesting points, but I'm not going to get into that. Let's talk about the bloodline. Now, the word Elu, if you look it up on Wikipedia and you look up the origins and etymology of the word Elu, you'll find a few different things. One of those things is the, I think it's a Sanskrit word that's related, and it conveys the meaning of unmixed. Okay? The Elu, the word Elu itself conveys sometimes the meaning to be unmixed, to be pure, essentially. Now, this ties directly into the El, into the bloodline, and this is why the vampires and everyone else are so concerned. See how they scar the face to look more like reptilian, like the gods. See, there's the armor, etc. Anyway, so the Elu are very concerned about their bloodline, about their genetic coding. It's not because they just love their family so much, okay? Don't get me wrong. This is a Vulcan mindset, okay? This is the mindset that the ends justify the means. They care very much about the DNA, the genetic sequencing, the abilities that those people will have, that they want to be as pure as possible so that they don't lose their abilities, so that they don't lose this connection that they have with their ancestors. They don't want to become animals, is basically how that's kind of seen. They don't want to evolve and turn into something that is entirely different from the beings that they started off as or directly related to, right? If anything, they would like to keep their demigod status as opposed to being purebred human or something else entirely, which I don't know if you can be that entirely, but they don't like to be mixed, and that's why they're so concerned with their blood, and why blood is usually involved in the elite or the Illuminati practices. They want to keep their DNA pure, as pure as they can. They want to keep that coding undefiled. All other people are seen as mongrels, as animals, as goyim, as cattle. Basically saying, hey, if you don't care about your genetics, if you don't care, if you're not trying to keep your genes and your programming pure, then you're basically an animal to us. And that's their mindset. So that's why they don't really feel bad when they have these sacrifices or when they do things where people are, the reset button is hit on so many people's lives, and they don't really feel that bad because it's kind of like, you're not a part of us. You're not equals to us, and that's how they see it. So they see others as mongrels. Another good word to use is muggles for those of you who are interested in Harry Potter, right? If you're not a wizard, if you don't have the wizard blood in you, then you're seen as a muggle, which is sort of a funny pronunciation of mongrel, okay? You're basically seen as a non-magical, somebody who has no power. You have no power. You have no abilities. You have no power. Your power has been removed. We have power now, and we would like to keep it. That's kind of how they see these things. They are the demigods, or would like to be. They may be able to transfer souls into different vessels. They are also known as the pure bloods, right? With the pure DNA sequence. They are also known as the blue bloods. Interestingly enough, the Vulcans of Star Trek are also known as having blue blood. Now, if the El had blue blood and they were seen as this sort of ivory, albino, very white, pasty color, if their blood was blue, don't you think that might shine through a little bit? And that might help to explain why they would look not pure white, but have this sort of bluish tint to them, just like us. If you look at me right now, you can tell, right? If you look at my skin, it has a reddish tint to it, right? Even though I'm Caucasian, even though I'm white, I have a reddish, sort of rosy colored tint to my skin, and that's because I have red blood, okay? There is blood running through my skin, and sometimes it's red because it's oxygenated, because I like to breathe, and sometimes it's blue because it has less oxygen. Like when you look in your wrist, sometimes you can see the blue vein, and that is the blood that's on its way back to the heart in order to get oxygenated. Excuse me. Oh, let's see here. We're going to wrap things up in just a moment. Divine right. So the blue bloods, they claim divine right. What does divine mean? That means permission from above, permission from the stars, permission from the gods, right? Nil sine numine is a Latin phrase that can be found on the Colorado State seal at the very least, which means nothing without permission from above. Nothing without divine permission. Not permission from one all-permeating God figure, but from the gods, from the strong and mighty leaders that once walked our plane of existence. Okay? Nothing without their permission, which they still walk our plane of existence. Like I said, they went into hiding. And they will return one day, which is how we're going to wrap up this video. We're going to talk about the return of the El. Now, if anything that I've said during the course of this lengthy video has made any sense, then I want this to sink in. Right along with the popped collars, the skin tones, the abilities, the magic, all of the things that we see, all of this seemingly separate evidence weighs together as one evidence, right? Also, in all of these stories, whether it be Ragnarok, whether it be the second coming, the arrival of the blue Kachina star, the return of Quetzalcoatl, an alien invasion, or something also known as the harvest of the gods. Think about that one. All of these God-type beings, all of these strong leaders, the mighty shepherds, the heroes, the heroes, our superheroes of old, the creator beings. Every story implies that they will come back. Every story talks about how they had left, and now, since they have left, we have missed them, basically. We try to be like them, we call upon them, we cry out to them. They're clearly not around. Nobody's really showing up. Now, you can attribute miracles and stuff, or whatnot, but I'm talking physically showing up, okay? All of these religions, all of these stories, all of these myths and legends and lore of our ancient history imply that the gods, the El, will come back someday. They will return. Now, we've grown accustomed to them not being here. And that's why we have kept them in story form, in caricature, in all of these different ways, right? To remind ourselves, to give ourselves a little trail of breadcrumbs to follow back home. But they say that they will return one day. Now, when they return, they also say that there's probably going to be a fight. There's going to be some problems, that they're going to need to clean up a mess type of a deal. It's interesting to me because as far as an alien invasion, and we know that the word alien is directly related to the El, or the Elyon, the gods, that when they return, it's going to be shocking because we have grown accustomed to the absence, right? When humanity goes a certain amount of time from significant events happening, those events turn into myth and stories and bedtime stories and fairy tales, and pretty soon they're just considered lies. We forget that there's a reality there. So imagine what kind of fear it's going to strike and respect it's going to strike into the hearts of those who are alive at that time when the El return. Now remember, there are good El and there are bad El. The good El are those who promote humanity continuing to live, right? They promote goodness and purity, and, Superman kind of represents the good El. He's Kal-El. And then there are the bad El, represented by things like, the Joker and Pennywise and stuff like that. But anyhow, the El, the gods, all the stories indicate that they will return one day. And the only reason I bring that up is for no religious significance, but just to prepare people. I believe that it's important for us to study the past, to uncover our past that has been hidden from us, our ancient oblivion, so that we can understand our origins, so we know more about who we are, why we're here, who's in charge, what we're doing, what we'd like to do, what has been taken away from us, what has been deleted, what has been restricted, so that we can empower ourselves to get those things back. It all starts with the concept of self. Who am I? And that's the main question that we ask. Everyone wants to know, who am I? Where am I? What am I? And it's ridiculous because these are questions we should know. This is the first thing that we should be taught. Not something that we should be left wondering. It shouldn't be a cliffhanger. So I'm here to guide and to share my path with you because I'm discovering more about who I am and where I come from. Now, the reason I mention this is because equally important to studying our past, to figure out where we are, is to understand the future and what is to come. So it gives us purpose to our present. The past gives our present meaning. The future gives our present purpose, so that we can plan things out, so that we can be prepared, so that time can be on our side as it has been on the side of the immortals for so long. They understand this. They know that humans come and go like that, but they don't. So why not use time as a tool for us? Now, that being said, I've been talking for like 3 hours. My voice is going to give out soon. I'm going to wrap things up. I want to jump into the chat. I want to let everyone know I am JayDreamerZ. This is what I do for a living. I share my path. I teach. I inspire. I guide. And I love doing this. I really do. I have studied my entire life, whether I knew it or not. And now I'm able to share all of the things that I've learned and come across in my life. I want to thank you, if you're watching from a phone or your television or computer, for your time. However long you've spent listening to me go on and on and on. I truly hope that there was something that I said during our discourse that you got something from it. That's all I really hope. I don't want you to, to just believe everything I say, but I just hope that there was something that you resonated with that has benefited you in some way. That's why I do what I do. So that being said, I also want to let everyone know I'm working on a book. And my book is going to be about ancient Oblivion. It's going to be about that old Avatar-like world that I have made reference to during this video. So I'm working on a book. I'm also working on a website to include even more information. And I'm excited about both of those things. Last but not least, I just want to thank my patrons. I want to thank all of the people who work behind the scenes and support what I do to make what I do so much easier and help me to make things better and better and better as I go. So I appreciate all of you. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to roll the credits and the outro here, and I will see you guys in at least a couple of more weeks. Thanks for watching. Bye.
JayDreamerZ, think outside the box.
Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I'm so sorry, but I do this all the time. I was just talking about how much I love my patrons, and I'm trying to find the credits section, which gives some respect to my patrons. So I'm going to go ahead and stay on for just a second longer so that I can add this real quick, because I would hate to leave them out of it. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and put that. I'm so sorry about this. I thought I had all of this prepared beforehand. This is like super awkward. So what I'm going to do, if I can't find the outro I made with the credits, is I'm going to go ahead and just give a shout out to all my patrons real quick. Oh man, let me see if I can find it. One second, bear with me here. Like I say quite often, this is not HBO. This is not TV. This is a real person trying to piece things together all on my own. So I have an idea. I'm going to go ahead and bring up another screen here. And just for the inconvenience, I'm going to go ahead and do a question and answers session for a few minutes while I get this all pulled up. If you have a question, go ahead and type in at JayDreamerZ, and I'll read your question and go ahead and respond to it as well while I get this all pulled up. Candy Jones says, play a game. Nah, I'm not in a game playing mood tonight. I'm more kind of serious tonight. Oh, wow. I worked on these credits for quite some time. Man. That's insane. Okay, so it's definitely going to be a verbal shout out. I want to apologize to my patrons. But yeah, that's insane. Man, I just had it all right there too. Okay. Well, no use crying over spilled milk, right? Let's see here. Let me go ahead and bring up Patreon, and I'm going to give a verbal shout out to all of my patrons. I'm so sorry. I'm still refining this process, okay? This is why I have patrons, to help me. It really makes things a lot easier when you have more time to dedicate to things. But anyhow. Oh, I would like to give a special shout out to Darren Anderson. Thank you so much. Darren's been a longtime supporter of mine for quite some time. And, I was able to talk to him on the phone the other day for the first time. And it's wonderful for me to reach out and to talk to all of these different people. So hello, Darren, if you're watching. Thank you so much for your support. Mike Smith is one of my newer patrons. I like talking to Mike as well. I chat with him on the phone once a month. Fawn Evans. I had a special lunch with Fawn and her family. Her 2 kids actually just became subscribers. So, hey, kids, just want to say hello. And Edward. Edward is my unsung hero. Edward has been I think he's my oldest patron. And so, while I don't get to talk to Edward that much, I just want to say I am so appreciative of all of the support that you've given me for quite some time now. I believe it's been over a year, and I just want to say thank you. Also, new patron is Bemi. Hello, Bemi. Nice to meet you. And Nathan S., as well as Tessa. Tessa has a brilliant mind, also known as Tessa LaCoyle. Also, Andrea. Hello, Drea. These are all people I will be talking to very soon, as that's one of the reward tiers on Patreon, is I call up some people and we just have a good chat for a while. Leanne, I don't know if you're still awake when you're watching this live, but if you're watching it later on, I just want to let you know you're in my thoughts, and I hope everything is going well for you. And there's also Deborah. I chatted with Deborah, and she has such a positive energy and a wonderful soul. Very kind, and I can almost feel her smiling whenever I chat with her. I love it. Kevin, very interesting person to chat with. I like talking to Kevin. He's very intellectual, very understandable, and very respectful. Kevin, I hope you had a great vacation, man, and I hope everything's going well for you, and I'll talk to you soon. As well as Brandy. Now, earlier, Brandy in Canada, or Alaska, sorry. I talked to Brandy, and she actually is the one that told me to check out the movie Beyond the Sky. So Brandy, I really hope that I was able to answer some of your questions about what do I think about the movie. And also thank you so much for all of the breadcrumbs that you drop my way. We also have Jack Smith, last but not least. Jack Smith, also known as Colo. And Colo actually, when I was going to go on a trip to Antarctica, immediately just jumped up and sent me a couple of pair of snow goggles to support the cause, which I still have. And hopefully I'll be able to put those to good use sometime soon, probably after my book comes out. I also want to give a quick shout out to the following patrons: Samantha, James J. Rock, Carol Pollock, or Carol P, excuse me, Oddsock, Unlost, Rulaine, of course, Fox Kelly, Shane, Francisco, Mannybuds has been on the Dream Team for quite some time. Bonita, also want to say hi to Bonita, and Kimberly K, as well as Akko. I'm not sure how to say the name, but Akoti. So those are all of my patrons. I'm really sorry about the credits not rolling. I'm not sure what happened. I really thought that I had it here, but I don't, clearly. So that's something I will work on. For those of you who stayed the extra little while, I'm going to go ahead and do questions and answers for a bit, just to kind of make up for such a sad ending to such a good video. Suso, hey, by the way, everyone who donated today in the super chat, I wasn't paying attention to the chat, so I didn't see a lot of it on my screen. I was looking at my notes and stuff. Suso, I just happened to see your donation. I want to say thank you to all of you who used the super chat to donate to me today. Everyone who supports what I do, even if you're just saying thank you and you're sending something on the super chat or PayPal or whatnot, that goes a long way in my life. And I'll probably do a video about supporting your local truther. That's something I'm starting to become very adamant about, being that I am now in those shoes. And that type of stuff means a lot to us. Now, that being said, that doesn't mean that we don't appreciate equally the viewers and the subscribers and the comments and the people in the chat, everything. Yes, absolutely. I respect and admire all of you for everything that you contribute. But I do want to give a special shout out to Suso. I just happened to see your comment. And he says, great show, Jay. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed your interpretations and explanations. You wouldn't believe how many Mandela effect references were made. I'm just saying. Suso happens to have written a book about the Mandela effect. So if you would like to buy it, go to Suso and check that out. Let's see. We also have Leanne, who says, hey, Leanne is awake. She says, great work. Hype Hillbilly says, I'm glad JayDreamerZ is getting big. I have been a sub since 3,000 to 5,000 subs. Well, I'm glad to have you, Hype Hillbilly. And Candy Jones says, play a game. I think I read that one. JayDreamerZ, talk about the eclipse. I'm sorry, I don't have enough information to talk about the eclipse. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Keep in mind, I don't watch the news, so I have no idea what's happening in the news these days. Lootable Corpse, that's funny, says, JayDreamerZ, hey Jay, great talk. How does Quetzalcoatl relate to Enlil and Enki? That's a great question. Quetzalcoatl is the plumed serpent said to return, as is the major gods of major religions. So basically they're all one and the same. And it's directly related to Enki and his family and his followers, and the Lord returning with thousands upon thousands of his angels, or his angel elves, right? And there will be a final war. Let's see, Leanne, she's like, we understand. Leanne's one of my patrons, so I'm like, I feel so bad. I'm like, it was a really cool thing. I worked on it for a long time, so I'm not happy about it, but that's all right. It was a good video. Jamie McFall says, JayDreamerZ is the new Godzilla movie disclosure from the Illuminated ones. I'm going to tell you this much. I'm going to go out on a limb and say yes, even though I have not seen it, quite honestly. But I will bet you I'm going to go see it. And here's one other thing, sort of a benefit. If I get a certain number of patrons, I have a patron goal on Patreon. If I can get some more patrons, what I'm going to do is start another channel. I'm going to start another YouTube channel, and it's going to be focusing only on the movies and maybe music videos. And I'm going to break down the esoteric symbolism in the movies and the music industry on a brand new channel if I get enough support. So that's something that I do like. So I can definitely, and also if that happens, most likely what I'll do is I'll take movie recommendations from my patrons first, and that way you guys can just recommend movies for me to break down. Brandy K says, JayDreamerZ, don't wear yourself out, man. Thanks for sharing your journey. Clearly you can tell I'm losing my voice. Savannah says, JayDreamerZ, will you do another mud fossil stream soon, please? Let's see. Yes, I probably will. I've got a couple of other video ideas on the way, but I'm going to talk about the Earth Quarry and other things that relate to mud fossils. Candy Jones says, you watch anime? There is this anime about a moon. I don't honestly really watch a lot of anime, but I do study anime, if that makes sense. I do get lots of anime recommendations because anime is just like anything else, and there's a lot of good breadcrumbs there. Candy Jones. Oh, Norb's Theory. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I skipped some people. I'm sorry about that. Hype Hillbilly says, what do you think of Norb's theory? I think Norb's theory is brilliant. I love it. I think that there are always more that we can add to the story, and there are other implications of Norb's theory. But I think it's wonderful. And if you guys don't know what Norb's theory is, just go ahead and type it into YouTube, and the videos will pop right up. Girl on Fire, she's been with me for quite some time. It's good to see you. I like having you in my chat. Girl on Fire says, have you read the book Electric Universe? I have not read the book, but I have absolutely studied the Electric Universe model and incorporate that into my ancient Oblivion theory, and as well as Velikovsky's works on how the heavens once looked and where the planets were and stuff like that. Tanuj says, JayDreamerZ, what do you think of Earth Angels? I think that they are the L, basically. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but I did break down the word angels earlier, so I recommend checking that out. And Jamie says, fantastic live. Thank you, JayDreamerZ, for all the time and hard work that you put into your vids and presentations. You know what? I really appreciate that, Jamie. Because, I mean, I spend hours behind the scenes and I still don't get it right. So it means a lot to me when I get positive feedback like that. I'm surprised nobody's mentioned the old smooth face I have going on. But I needed to reset and I needed to restart. So that's sort of something that I do when I try to restart, is I shave and I do all that kind of stuff. Let's see here. I think that was it. Okay, that was the last question. I want to thank all of my patrons. I want to thank you all for your time. And I want to thank my vocal cords for lasting 3 hours and 10 minutes. I'm going to go. You guys have a great rest of your day. And I'll talk to you later. All right, I'm really going this time. All right, bye.
JayDreamerZ, think outside the box.